8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to Magic After Dark. My name is Ryan Edwards. This guy over here is
Blaze Star. Welcome everybody to the show. We are so excited for another episode. We've got an incredible guest today.
pumped. Tonight's going to be good.
I'm so pumped. Yes.
I seen this guy live 2 years ago.
I have as well. Yeah.
He absolutely blew my mind and everybody else that was there. So I'm excited to see him tonight. And
I saw him perform for like a mixed audience of magicians, non-magicians, and he got the craziest reactions of the whole night. It was like a big gala show. Yeah. So I can't wait to bring him in. Before we bring him in, I just want to give a quick announcement to everybody. We have a new feature, new segment of the show tonight. If you would like to be a part of the show tonight, this is your opportunity, because if you go to 1v1magic.com, right here, you can see 1v1magic.com right there. If you go to 1v1magic.com, you can join the Magic Discord. Go into the stage channel, the stage voice channel on the Magic Discord at 1v1magic.com, and then we can bring you in and you can ask Stuart MacDonald, our guest, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Stuart MacDonald, any questions that you'd like. So without further ado, let's bring him into the show. As we've already said, the man,
the myth, the legend,
Stuart, the man,
the myth,
the legend, MacDonald.
Oh, there you go.
He did it.
Do that too.
He had a handkerchief, a silk.
I like the handkerchief.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
We're talking high tech over here.
He want to get the lens dirty there. He's like, no, not touching that lens. How are you, sir?
We're just smudging our lens every time we do it.
Oh, really? That's not good.
Yeah. Last week, it was like, I was down in the basement, so it's a little colder down there. By the time I took my hand off, it was like completely fogged. I was like, oh, this is not good. How's things going?
They're going as appropriately they can go at this juncture. Actually, I'm going to be competing to qualify for FISM in Quebec in 2.5 weeks. So that's the latest thing right now. So
yeah, I've been seeing on Facebook that you are like doing rehearsals for your act. I mean, almost every day I see you're like killing it on Facebook, like putting up Zoom links and stuff for people to come in and watch. That's correct. So yeah, are you just asking for like immediate feedback from those? Like, how are you making those work?
Well, the thing is that there's no live performing for this kind of act. This act is either part of a bigger show or that's usually part of a production show.
Yeah.
And it's an 8-9 minute act. It's actually an 8-minute and 56-second act, if you want to be accurate. So there's no place to perform it. So I thought, well, I need to get the jitters out, the backstage jitters, because I haven't done this act in 17 months. Yeah. So I don't want to, go, and I've also made a lot of improvements. So I didn't want to go out on stage, seeing my hands all, nervous and not testing this new material out that I had. And I just was like, there's only one way to do it. Free Zoom shows come in, and I don't want to take up people's time. So it's like 15 minutes, a quick introduction, and a big thank you at the end. And if you want to leave a comment, good or bad, doesn't matter. It's up to you. I didn't ask anybody to really, this is what you must do if you watch the show.
Yeah.
Pretty much all I asked for was, is there anything that bothered you? And that kind of gives people permission to be critical and say, well, if you really want my opinion, if this really did kind of bother me. And some of it was junk. Some of it was like, it would take $1 million to produce. And some of it was like, hey, that gives me a different idea. And I'll try this. And so actually a few really good ideas came out of it. And So now the workshopping phase is over with, and now it's just tightening up the act, and I'm ready. I mean, I could compete tomorrow. I don't have any qualms doing this act in its new phase. Matter of fact, I'll tell you something. I did do a live show at Abbott's, and it was a horrible performance. It was terrible. I mean, your introduction was really great, but when you're testing new material and you haven't been in front of anybody for 17 months, I said, you know, I've got like a ton of new ideas, but I've got to test all of them at the same time. Yeah. And so I did the act at Abbott's, and I walked off stage and I go, oh my God, that was a lot for people to take in all at once, because it was like rapid fire, this and that and everything. And so if you saw my act at Abbott's, first of all, I apologize. That was a testing ground. It wasn't finished work. And most of that act has since been, cut. So,
how many years have you been working with this act to get it to this point?
It started in 2014, and it was a horrible act. I wanted to compete in FISM Italy, and the act was only 6 months old, but I had no idea how difficult FISM competing was until I went to St. Louis. In St. Louis, Mike Caveney called it "Welcome to the South Korean tsunami," and the South Koreans dominated the entire contest. They won everything. Wow. And the guy who went before me was the rewind act.
Oh yeah, manipulation.
Yeah. And he was right before me, and right out of the gate, the first thing I did was a technical failure. I had a string break, and so but about 2 minutes of the act didn't make any sense to anybody, and nobody would talk with me after that performance. Nobody. It was just So I basically face planted in front of all of Magic. In 2014. So it's been that long of developing it and turning it into what it is now.
Wow. It's funny that you say that no one would talk to you, because I remember, so I was working on Wizard Wars back in the day, and Greg and Shimshi did a routine, and it went bad. Like there was just things that didn't work and stuff like that. And Greg came off and he goes, when you do something bad, people are always like, oh, good job, man. Like you did, great and stuff. And he goes, but when you do really bad, he goes, no one wants to talk to you. And he comes over and he's trying to talk to me. And he's like, none of the crew is talking to me. No one will say a word. And I was like, oh man, it didn't work out great. But it is interesting that when things like that happen, when something like everybody's like, okay, steer clear, right? It's like, don't talk to that guy yet.
Yeah, I think it's because artists are usually damaged people. So when they do really bad, the first impression is to destroy something, throw something, get into somebody's face and say, I was terrible. What are you talking about? And they just don't want to be around for that. Yeah. But that's not me. And I was just pleading with people, just tell me. So, but the only person that came to me and said, I see something in this act, and it was Gene Anderson. So he took me to a restaurant and he got me a beer, and we talked about at length what he wanted to see. And he said, I want a story. And that's all he said. I want a story. And I'm like, wow, that blows my mind. A story. And that's how this whole character act came together, was just focusing on that. And here we are. Yeah. Thank you, Gene Anderson.
Yeah.
And many other people. Oscar Munoz was also a critical factor in it as well as in. I have a whole host of people that really did, help me out.
And I'm gonna already do it. I'm gonna ask for a mic drop, and I'm gonna explain why in a second. But
no, that's absolute gold nugget, mate.
Boom.
My God, game changer.
Two things. Stuart first said that you've been working on that routine, so now it's been 7 years, or a little bit more than 7 years, which is crazy because most magicians today are like, can I buy something right now and perform it in the next 10 minutes because I need to go out and do a show tonight. All right. So to be working on a routine that first you failed on, which makes the story even better, but to work on something for 7 years to master like every single move of every thought process is inspiring, because I know a lot of people either that or they do the exact same thing for 7 years and it never gets better. It's like the go-to. It's like ambitious card routine. It's like it's stayed the same for 7 years and they've never tweaked anything, where you've been constantly tweaking and making changes and making it better for 7 years, which I think is incredibly inspiring. But then I liked what you said about Gene as well, by saying make it a story, because to me that I've always said that I think magic falls short that way. All of my shows are story-based shows, the entire show from start to finish. And I always say that because I think most of the time when we go to see a magician or a mentalist, it's kind of like, well, look what I bought at the store today. I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do this. And then it's this. And nothing correlates. And I remember having a conversation with Kale Morelli about it, saying if we were magicians, we would probably really only have maybe one or two abilities. We wouldn't be able to do everything, right? Most magicians on stage can, teleport. They can, read minds. They can cut people in half and restore it. Like they just do everything. It's like if we could do everything, we probably wouldn't be doing magic shows. It'd be the last thing. So I've always tried to base shows around stories. So it's super inspiring that's what Gene said to you, to really transform your whole aspect, your look on the whole routine. So
yeah. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, yeah, exactly right.
I was just thinking about, we have the same tools at our disposal that any other theatrical art form has. And you think about the fact that if you go to a play or a musical or a movie, there are so many emotions that are being evoked within the audience by that piece. Whereas we usually just focus so much on the emotion of astonishment within the magic world, and I think it's through narrative that then you're able to evoke way more than just the astonishment. The astonishment becomes a baseline. People are going to be astonished by what you're doing because it's magic. And now you can make them feel so many different things and tap into more emotional centers in their brain. We have somebody, Cameron Braxton, here, who has just hopped into the Discord. So I'm going to ask him if he would like to
this will be, Stuart, you're going to see a new segment tonight. This is the first time we've had people be able to call in and ask questions. So this will be interesting.
But I'm going to keep working on that.
Okay.
But we'll keep talking while I get him to join.
I'll tell you how I met Stuart. So we were at the Maze convention and you saw me performing, because I performed before you. And now I call you like behind your back, I call you an underground beast, because I didn't know who you were, to be honest. And you saw me in the dealer's room and you said, "Hey, I really like your drink routine that you did last night. It was really cool." And I turned I'd been talking to a bunch of people at the convention, and I was like, "Oh, hey, thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a long work in progress." Like that routine took me 6 years just to figure out.
Are you able to hear me okay?
And he is.
You guys
there.
hear Cameron?
Yeah.
Oh, we can hear him just fine.
That's why he's talking. Cameron, Ryan was in the middle of a sentence. We got to try the see how we can do this when it comes to everybody hearing each other. But we're curious. Cameron, do you have any questions for Mr. Stuart MacDonald while he's here?
Oh, no, I just got a notification saying that you were live, and then I saw it popped up saying that I was invited to speak, and as of right now, you are the only person that I can hear.
Copy.
Oh,
All right.
interesting.
Well, yeah. The notification did say join this channel if you wanted to ask a question, but that's fine.
Oh,
No, it's all
all
right.
right, no worry.
But while you're here, if you have anything that you want to ask Stuart MacDonald, or I can move you out.
Who's he?
No, I'm content.
All right.
Awesome.
Cameron, have a good night.
All right, take it easy.
Everybody, or what is it? Oh, there you go.
There you go. All right, so the first call-in did not work great.
I mean, it worked that he could hear, but it did not work in that he did not have a question. That is the more important aspect of the call-ins.
It's good. He interrupted my story anyways. So
The underground beast. I like that. I mean,
yes,
I mean,
because I met you for like 2 minutes. You were like, "Oh hey, and I like your routine," and then we kind of just went our separate ways.
yeah.
And I to be honest, I was like, okay, Stuart is just a guy at the convention, right? Like I didn't know who you were. I imagine you didn't know who I was beforehand either.
Right.
And then you performed that night. And I immediately went, oh shit. I was like, that guy's a beast. And I came to you after. I was like, dude, that was crazy. And then the next day you lectured on it. And it blew me away even more, because what I was inspired with is that nothing of yours is electronic.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, that's a really cool prop. Like, oh man, this is neat. And then you were like, you flipped your table around, and I was like, this is crazy. It's like mouse traps and like all these gadgets and stuff. But you've created it all, correct? Like you've come up with everything.
It's all about necessity, and I've even since trimmed a lot of the mechanisms down so that they're even more reliable, and there's no more mouse traps. It's just literally levers that I bump into with my thigh.
Nice.
And that's how I operate everything on the table. There is one electronic thing. Well, I have two vapes that I use.
Okay.
And I have the money shooter.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
but if you really want to be technical.
Yeah.
But yeah, about the it's the version of the act that you saw isn't even close to what it is now.
Yeah.
It has really evolved quite a bit since then. And some of the act that because I videotape everything and I put the videos in boxes to see progress. It's like, this is this is 2014, this is 2016, this is, just to see if there's any progress in character development or story flow. And the show you saw, I'm almost embarrassed, but it's part of the process, And I think that people get really hung up on that, is that they want to be perfect out of the gate, and that's such a holding point for them, and it's like, they have to understand that magic is an art like everything else. It's a process.
Yeah.
And you have to keep nipping away at it every single time you rehearse, every single time you perform, and so on. So when you saw that lecture, you were seeing the other 100% of what happens, that what the audience doesn't see, especially my wand work.
Yeah.
My wand now, I would say you would probably have a hard time understanding what I'm doing, because I'm doing even more innovative things. At one point, the wand looks like it might be a Fantasio candle converted into, but I make it react in the same way. It's really weird.
Yeah.
So it's about drilling down, but making it. And I'll just let you guys ask another question. But the thing that in that lecture that I really probably missed on, because I keep growing every single time that I work on this act, is that every single action that you do, if you're telling a story, is very important. And as you drill down in, just like, for instance, I've been workshopping just pulling the bags off of the back of the mirror as they're multiplying. And in the last 3 weeks, I was like, there's just something wrong with it. It's been bugging me for a long time. I never had enough time to really focus on it. And as I was focusing on it and looking at it, I was like, oh, I think I know what's wrong. The bags aren't getting heavier. Mm-hmm. And so I started working on the pantomime part of making the bags heavier and heavier and heavier. And that gave me markers to look forward to. Is like, oh, this is like a performance, like a dance. It's like, oh, this one comes out and it's just a little bit heavier. And this one comes out and it's like, it's a little bit heavier. And then the 4 bags come out and they're a lot heavier. And now when the bags all come out and I've got 4 bags, one in each, actually 8 bags, I fall backward away from the mirror, like trying to catch myself. And then I come forward to control my fall, but that brings me forward to the audience for the bow moment. Yeah. And at the same time, instead of going, ta-da, here's the bow and all the money flies up, it's like, no, let's make the money fly right away. So as soon as those bags are controlled, I've got money flying out all over the place, and it's uncontrolled, and it's hilarious.
That's awesome.
So it's those kind of moments that people miss because they stop asking questions about where they're at, what they're doing, and how they're doing it. And so what I do is I establish rules for this character to live in, and he lives in a rule where he can't affect anything. Everything has to affect him. And everything that I do has to be a natural movement and not a magic movement, like what a magician would do. Yeah. So there you go.
So he's kind of the victim of the magic rather than the perpetrator of it. Yeah.
Totally. But he slowly gets it over time. And as he is understanding, some of it's haunted and some of it's like I have a bat now in the act. Yeah. It's I don't know if you've seen that or not. But it's stupid, but it entertains me. And that's really important because it makes me, it's like I'm looking forward to this bat part because it is funny. But the thing with the bat is that I need iconic haunted house moments that you would normally see in like a Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. So you've got the skull, and I went from a 1 candle chamber candle to a 3 candle. And the 3 candle is more impressive when it multiplies in front of the mirror. So, those are the kind of things that I've been really focusing on, is just where can I find more bits to reveal a little bit more about the character and who he is, why you may not know why he's there, but how is he trapped in all of this? And like one other bit is like when he puts his top hat on for the first time, just to test it, the cloth for the mirror falls off to the side and it catches his eye. So again, I'm not affecting the anything in this atmosphere. So I look in the mirror and I scream. That's the only thing in this act that makes me frightened, and it's myself. And it's a funny little bit, but it's something it's honest, because if you were alone in a house that had no electricity and you looked into what appeared to be an open frame and you see a person in there, you would scream. And I scream out loud. and it's probably it's the loudest thing that you'll ever hear in the act, but it creates a moment in the act that's honest and pure.
Nice. Now, I know you said that you're done tweaking the act, but are you still doing the nightly rehearsals?
We're going to scale that back a little bit. I'm going to do one on September 13th, and probably I'm going to be cherry picking them. I think I had a very ambitious schedule.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to do at the very beginning of this ambitious thing is to get all the nervousness, the nerves and the bugs out. But we're at a point now where I really don't need anybody's input, because I have what I have now, and we're just going to drill it.
Yeah.
And because any changes to add now would be so minor, like instead of looking here, look there. I mean, no,
for sure.
So I'll release Zoom rehearsals ad hoc.
Yeah,
as I see fit.
Nice.
Well, I'm curious. What were you going to say, Ryan?
Well, I was going to say, I said to my wife the other day, I said, you've got to watch this guy. I said, he's coming on the show tonight, but I said, we have to catch one of his practice sessions, because I said the act will blow you away. So
yeah, I definitely want to see it as well. I'm curious because this has been since 2014. So this has been, 7 years that you've been continually developing. And I think that it's a quote, I think by Gaby Pareras, where he was talking about magicians as artists are less like painters and more like gardeners that are continually pruning and tending to their harvest, rather than painting something and it's one and done, and it's a complete work of art. It's never really done. There's more that you can keep working on. But when you're creating something for FISM, that's years and years to create a piece that's, say, like under 10 minutes long. In yours, 8 minutes and 56 seconds. So yeah. You're trying to create that piece that doesn't fill a full show. So when you're doing the rest of your show, are you, like, as a professional performing working magician, are you also continually putting that same amount of work into it as you are your FISM act, or do you have to kind of let that be as it is so that you can just focus on these 8 minutes as your main priority? How does that work, that balance of the rest of your material, outside of this one act?
Good question. The honest answer is no. I don't think anybody could honestly take their act and put as much scrutiny as you need to with a competition act. I think, like comedians, they might, they'll write 2 minutes of material a month until they have an hour, and then they'll go and they'll work it in the clubs, and then they'll do a special or whatever. But that's kind of like like Bill Burr and Brian Regan, those guys. That's kind of the method that they use. But they're not putting this kind of scrutiny. Because every night is a different audience. There's interaction. There's somebody that's heckling them over here, and every night there's new material that keeps coming in. And that's kind of the same way that I approach my long show, and I kind of keep it loose. But I have routines that are constantly being updated and manipulated, and it's like, oh, this is going to be a better bit. We can do this here and do that there, and it's that kind of process. But it's nothing like this, because this would drive anybody insane. It really, really would. There's not enough time in the world for anybody to put this kind of effort. I mean, this is like the Olympics, and you're working on this one routine that you've got one shot at it, and you can't do the Olympics your entire life because it's too time consuming.
Yeah. Now, if you had to estimate, at least, let's say this year during COVID, how many hours, because obviously since the 7 years would be tough, but how many hours have you put into this act this year?
The honest answer is, I didn't touch it until May. I kind of I set up my table, and I just sort of monkeyed around with the wand act a little bit here, coming up with what would it look like if I broke the mirror, and so I made a broken mirror kind of effect, and just testing things out in my garage, and just going, I don't know, I don't think this is going to happen for a long time. And then when they canceled FISM, it's like, gosh, 2 more years of this, jeez.
Yeah.
So so I just kind of went into this like, I gotta shelf it and not think about it for a while, because now I have time, and just let it Stuart, in my head. And I'm glad I did it, because when May hit, I came at it with more vision and more gusto than I did when I was competing for FISM in Korea. And I thought I was doing well then. I had 1,000 rehearsals scheduled, and I beat it for that. And this, I was like, I'm not going to do 1,000 rehearsals, but I'm going to do 1,000 times better at managing the progress. And I achieved it. And so yeah, May is when I started. I couldn't tell you how many hours. It wasn't as many. But it was highly concentrated, because I would spend like instead of 4 hours just going over the act and going over the act and go over the act, just like, yeah, that worked as you were developing the whole. Now that I have the whole, I need to drill out all the small parts. So I would just go, okay, we're going to work on how I approach this one section of the wand that's kind of giving me fits. I want it to look more natural. So I would work on literally a 30-second piece of the act until it looked like it was innocent, completely innocent. And then I would go to the next. And so you can only do that 30. It's like a person who is in the Olympics. They do a 100-yard dash. Do you know how long their workouts are for the 100-yard dash? They do like 3 or 4 100 yards. That's it. And then the rest is strength training and all of that. But there's only because if they do more than that, then they injure themselves. So that's why I wanted to concentrate on just such a small part and only work on that 30 seconds for about an hour, maybe 2. And just it's amazing how many times you can do 30 seconds over and over and over and over and over an hour period of time. And that's how I got better quicker, was just working on these little rough spots.
Nice. Oh,
don't tell anybody. That's a great secret.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it. I mean, working on all those nuances, right? It's like, to then fully put everything together is fantastic. Now, Blaze, I don't know about you, but do you think we should get to?
I think that we should get to know our guests a little bit.
Get to know them a little better.
I think we should get to know them.
We don't know them that well yet. So.
Who are you?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time. It's time for 20 questions. It's time for 20 questions. Yeah, it's time for 20 questions. It's time for 20 questions. Yeah, put 2 minutes on the clock. 2 minutes on the clock. Put 2 minutes on the clock. 2 minutes on the clock. Here we go.
No, who? Blaze, was that you that did
Was what me?
Did you do the voiceover on that?
I did not do the voiceover on that one. No.
Oh, that was hilarious.
That was Mr. Ryan Edwards right there.
Ryan, good job.
Man, the myth, the legend, Ryan, the man, the myth. Now, we have some questions for you. You got some explaining to do. So we're going to have 2 minutes on the clock.
All right, I'll lean in for this.
So what's going to happen is we're going to ask you rapid fire questions. But we want good, honest answers, and we'll see how many you can get through.
Oh, I'm long-winded. I'll be as good as I can. Go ahead.
All
I
right.
added in some of the old questions just because I
I saw
forgot
that.
which one we had in that blank. Because
Yeah.
I think I wrote it in a separate document and didn't transfer the document. So next week it'll be a different question. However, comma, we have 20 questions for you. You have 2 minutes to answer as many questions as you possibly can. We'll see where you rank on the leaderboards. Here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Favorite color?
Purple.
Biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve. Did you like my act?
Biggest mistake during a performance?
Broken. Taking the invisible deck out of the wrong side of the box.
What always makes you laugh?
Three Stooges.
Secret talent?
I'm a really good bike rider.
First time you ever saw a magic trick?
I would say Doug Henning on a TV special.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Flying.
Dream performance venue?
The Hippodrome.
What's your most cherished memory?
My most cherished memory. Oh man, it's not magic. My first plane ride to Europe. It was in a Boeing 747.
Nice.
What is your favorite food?
Chicken cordon bleu.
Favorite movie?
The Thing.
What's the worst job you ever had?
Selling airtime for NBC.
Favorite magician?
There's so many of them. I'd say David Copperfield.
If you won the lottery, what's the first thing you'd buy?
I would buy an airplane.
What's your most highly recommended magic product or book?
Gene Anderson's latest book, Genius.
Genius. Gene Anderson's latest book. Genius. All right.
Nice. Well,
so you made it through 15.
15, not too bad. Not too bad. Average, Stuart.
Average. That's about me. Average.
Yeah.
Most people do get stuck at around 15. Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't even get to one of our new questions, 16.
We should ask him that. Yeah.
If you could remake any movie and star in it, what would it be?
Die Hard.
Die Hard.
Oh, I like it. Good choice. Now, follow-up question to that: is it a Christmas movie?
Is the remaking? You mean the with Hans Gruber? Yeah,
well, Die Hard, right?
The first one.
Iconic Christmas movie, right? People, but it's always a debate whether it is or not. So,
it's a Christmas movie. It's a tradition in our home.
Oh, good.
Nice. So, what was that like? You said selling airtime for NBC was
a horror show.
That was a horror show.
It's all a ripoff. It's a complete ripoff. It was the worst job I ever had. After the economic collapse in 2008, I had to go. Michigan was hit the hardest. We were the epicenter of it. So I went back to college, and one of my first jobs was working at a TV station, and I was selling airtime, and it was horrible. I mean, I'll tell you this: the first 2 weeks, two major incidents happened. There was a person who had been selling airtime for like 15 years there. And this woman was carrying a stack of files this big. And I had just been hired, and I'm typing in, my client list, and she just slams all of her files on the door right next to me. And I'm like, what the? And she goes, I just effing hate this job. And walked away. And then I'm going to the bathroom a couple days later, and this guy is behind me doing a Larry Fine from, Three Stooges, and he's pulling his hair out. He's like, and by the roots. I mean, literally pulling his hair out. And I'm going to the bathroom, and I'm like, okay. Just like, and this is Flint, Michigan. This is a tough town.
Yeah.
So I finish up, and then about 5 minutes later, you hear on the intercom, so-and-so, our news producer, has just decided to move on to another career position, and we all wish him well. 5 minutes later go by. If you see so-and-so, please call security. And that was my first 2 weeks. And it went downhill from there.
That's amazing. So here's a question, though, relating to that job. What I've found over at least the last 10 years in magic is a lot of magicians have only ever been magicians. They started doing magic when they were younger and in high school and stuff, and then have gone in that career path since. Do you think working another job has helped you more in magic now? Or do you think it would have been better to go into magic right away and do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, it absolutely did help me. I was a career man from 2012 to 2019. That's when I quit my job at Whirlpool and went to doing magic full time. And what I learned from that is seeing how people have to work every day. Because I had a career doing magic from 2008 all the way back to 1986. That's all I ever did was just magic. And I never knew what it was like to be a civilian. And I remember my first day at work, it was at WLFL in North Carolina. And I came back home after doing 9 to 6 p.m. at a news station as a TV producer, and just going, this is how people have been living their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
How can they do it? And I'm exhausted mentally, I'm exhausted physically, and then these people are raising families and going to ball games and all of this, and then having to restart going to work early in the morning and coming home late at night. And it gave me a profound respect for anybody who buys a ticket and sits in that audience, because they're taking their very precious spare time and handing it over to me with a responsibility of entertaining them and taking them on a ride that evening that is going to either give them a good time or not. And it just made me realize the immense responsibility we have as entertainers to really do our job well and stop complaining about, it's a bad audience or this or that. It's like, if you approach it if you really knew what those people were suffering through day to day, you probably would be a better entertainer. Yeah. That's how I look at it.
No, 100%. I tell so many people so often when they want to become a mentalist or magician full-time and stuff, I usually tell them, go get a job.
Mm-hmm.
Go get a job first. Work, build up, just your work ethic and stuff as well. Learn how to do that 9 to 5. Because I actually just last year during COVID, I told my friend, I had lost all these gigs. And in Canada, virtual shows weren't going rampant at the start like they were in the States. And so I lost my whole year basically in within a couple of weeks of COVID starting. It was just cancellation after cancellation every day. And I was like, oh boy, this is rough. And one of my friends works with this company and they were hiring people. And he said, I'll get you a job tomorrow, like just come to work. And I was like, so then I felt bad not going now, because like this guy's put my name in, and I was like, I don't really need to work yet, but okay. I did it for 2.5 weeks, and that's it. But I worked at an assembly line making hand sanitizers, like wall-mounted hand sanitizers for hospitals. And like working an assembly line job, getting paid like, you know, it was a little bit more than minimum wage, but like 20 years ago, I might have thought it was really great money. But now I'm like, oh my goodness, I just had to do all of that work for this, for a Subway sub. You know, it's like,
Right. Yeah.
and that was the first thing I thought was, you know, the next time I look down into the audience and see a family of, you know, 4 or 5, like what those parents had to do to make the money, to buy the tickets, to put the kids in the seats so that the family can have a good time is insane.
Makes you want to cry.
It does. It was really like you know, I was working there and I'm talking to people that, you know, are doctors in other countries and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh man, they've come to Canada and had no career. And now they're working, doing this to provide for their families, to just make it, right. And I think magicians, we take for granted so often, because it you know, it is something that you can get mediocrely good very quickly, I would say, if that makes sense. And you can be doing shows making money, and you know, for an hour show, you're making more than what most people make, you know, in a month sometimes, or a couple months. And it's like, so it's very easy to take it for granted. And when I did that, like I said, I only did it for a couple weeks. And then shows started picking up and stuff. And so I left, but I left going, I brought donuts. I remember I quit on the Wednesday, and on the Friday I went back to work and I brought a few dozen donuts for the employees. Cause I was like, I know me quitting now makes your job harder, because you're down one person. And I feel so bad about that, because it's already a terribly tough job where, you know, you're not appreciated by employment, because it's like, just work faster. And so I brought all these donuts, and one of the guys said to me, can I come and work for you? And you know, I wish I could. I wish I had jobs for people like that. But it's like, you know, it just makes you appreciate so much more of what people do to be able to come and see our shows. So
Agreed.
I love that answer. Fantastic. But I always just thought I find there's a lot of people in magic that don't really work that hard, because they've never done the 9 to 5 grind, where they're like, oh, I never want to have to do that again, so I'm going to work really hard at this, you know.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of magicians that, you know, that are spoiled in that, where they blame the audience, or they blame, it's like, if you're, there are bad audiences, I'll give you that. But it's funny sometimes when I've had really bad audiences, and then I meet some of the audience members, and they say, that's one of the best shows I've ever seen. And I'm like, are you the same people?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just like, you forget that, you know, the United States is really big, and every town has like a different culture. Some cities have the Polish district, the Chinese district, the Italian district, and this, and every culture has a different way of reacting. Who knows? You know, because it could be the way they are.
I think the best show I ever did was for insurance adjusters that go and actually look at the accident. Like, and I'm doing all that. First, they said right before I went on, they said, so last year we had Greg Fruin, he brought his tigers in. And I'm like, oh, I don't have tigers. I'm going to read your minds. Like, you know, I was like, and so I go on, I do my show, and no reactions the whole show until the very, very, very end. And I have a radio in the show, and it was supposed to play this song that the guy was thinking of, and there was no reception in the place. And thank goodness I had a backup, and I saw it, and I knew what the song was. And right at the end of the show, the guy said, "Oh, hey, what was the song?" And so I talk about it, and I tell him what the song is. And then all of a sudden they're like, "You should have your own religion." They're going nuts, and it's all crazy. And I was like, where was this the entire show? But it's nuts. Like, and the guy said to me after, he's like, "We're so used to seeing these insane things that most people don't see, that we just don't know how to react to something that's crazy on a daily basis now." So,
yeah.
But
I'll tell you one, just if people are interested with this mirror act and about audience reaction, one of the things I had to get used to is that this character isn't in front of an audience. So I'm not performing. And this is kind of like a slice of life. The proscenium is like where the world ends for me and begins for you. And there's no breaking that wall. What I had to learn, and it was so hard, it took a couple of years to really understand how to manipulate the audience and have secret audience cues where they could breathe and have that cathartic, applause, but then they would be like this, quiet as church mice during my act, because they're leaning forward and it's like watching a film for them. And because it's designed like a play. And so in doing so, and Gene and I had talked about this extensively, is that you are not showing off to this audience. This audience is there to just watch. And when you go to a play, every time a line happens, they're not going, "Oh, he delivered that line better than I've ever heard before." But if there's maybe something that's funny, then there's a little pause built into the dialogue so that the audience can react to it. But the audience in a play isn't like clapping after every little thing and every scene change. They're sitting there quietly, just kind of trying to get into where this event is happening and how it's processing in their brain. And so even though we want an audience to respond, my contract with the audience for this act is not, I do something amazing, therefore you have to respond in kind with applause. That's not how this act works. It's really weird.
It's not transactional with the audience. Like if I do this, then you will react in turn. It's more like we're all a part of this experience. Well, I guess not even necessarily a we thing. It's I'm going to do this thing, and you get to observe. And so,
I might do 10 effects before anybody does anything, and like there's a thing called the triple. I always call it the triple. Nobody knows what that is, but it's where I have a handkerchief in one hand, the wand. I have the handkerchief in this hand, the wand in this hand, and my glasses are missing. And I throw them up, and they both turn in. The silk is gone from this hand, the wand is gone from this hand, and my glasses are now in front of me. It's like, where did all that other stuff go? And so, you have two things that vanish and one thing appears all in the same instant. And that leaves my hands like this. And it's a moment where if that happened to you, what would you do? What? And that's when the audience applauds. So those are the subtle audience cues that we had to choreograph in. And it's like, give them a moment, just like you are. And that audience always responds at that, because they have seen so much happen up to that point that it's like, oh my gosh. It's weird.
And it's like your reaction to your own magic is just as essential as the techniques behind the magic you're doing in suspending the audience's disbelief. And if you don't react to yourself appropriately, then it'll feel unnatural, and then it'll take them out of the moment just as much as if you had messed up a trick or something.
Yeah, and I've had people mess me up so often with this, and I've gotten into heated discussions about how to approach this act. I've had really good magicians say you're overacting, you're mugging, you're doing this and you're doing that, and you've got to tone down the acting. And I'm like, okay, so I tried that. In toning down the acting, it's like if something puzzles you, what are you going to do? Oh, that's interesting. And it's so small because you want to examine it, and that's not interesting for an audience who's far away from you to go, what is he looking at? I can't understand what he's doing.
Mhm.
So I had to have a different approach to it that would satisfy that. And so what I started doing was looking at silent movies. And this is a silent act. So it is a silent movie in a sense. So, and then I started studying a little bit of Marcel Marceau. How do you convey emotion? How do you convey puzzlement? All these different things without going, if I'm alone in a room, I'm not going to go, oh my God, how is this happening? You're not going to do that, but you have to dial it up a little bit from this to, a little bit more. So the audience, so you're conveying information to them. And that was really quite a struggle to figure that out. And I think we're definitely achieving it, because one of the things that I started doing was I would record my act, and then I would take all the color out in black and white, and I would compare it to a movie that would have been shot like Abbott and Costello or through the Three Stooges, late early 1940s, late 1940s, in that period of time where it's black and white before Technicolor films were coming out, and I compared them, and then I started doing. I would stop the video, and I would take a screenshot, and then I would compare a screenshot to those movies, and I would see if the reactions were right, and I decided that the kind of the character that I'm looking at is Lou Costello, and those guys came from vaudeville. And vaudeville, it was all playhouses. And so when you're watching those guys act, they're kind of, especially in their early days, they're doing their old vaudeville skits. And they're kind of acting toward the camera, but not. It's a little tongue-in-cheek here and there. And so I've kind of dialed up myself into and focused that is kind of the character style I'm looking at. It's a style, and it's so difficult to emulate, and it's so rare because nobody that I know of is doing that. I think the closest person would probably be Tina Leonard. That was probably the last person that has done something like what I'm doing with her mop act.
Yeah. But it's crazy because if you think, like, I remember I grew up watching the Three Stooges, obviously reruns, but yeah, I mean, we don't have TV like that anymore. And I remember when the new Three Stooges, the movie came out, I was like, oh, I got to go see this because I hope that it's the same kind of thing as what I grew up on as a kid. And I went and seen it. I remember I got pulled over because I had a headlight out driving home from the theater that night, and the police officer stopped me and he said, oh, what are you up to? I said, I went and seen the Three Stooges. And he said, oh, how was it? Like, he grew up on that as well. And I said, it was terrible. Like, it's so bad because they couldn't emulate how it was back then, right? And it was like they tried to bring it too far up, and it was like, and it just, it missed the mark, I thought anyways. But But it's interesting to hear you say that you're comparing like black and like putting yourself in black and white too, just to kind of give yourself that, the same look, even the same feel and everything is really cool.
Yeah, and I think a great piece of advice for the fact, considering we have a lot of young magicians that are watching, that there's a lot of wisdom you can extract from that. In that, I feel like, especially within magic, we have a lot of magicians that feel as though the right way to do magic is to try and emulate magicians that they've seen, and then to try and do things that they find within magic books perfectly, as in like to replicate what they're reading and to do it with proper technique and excellence. But the thing is that in order to create this act and bring it to where it is now, there's no amount of magic books that you could read that would give you the same insight into performance as what you did with watching black and white movies, taking a recording of your act, putting it in black and white, watching it side by side with a black and white movie to see if your mannerisms align with that. That's entirely separate from the sleight of hand and the technique, but your performance, you were able to learn so much from outside of our little sphere of magic. And I think that, as performers, we should learn from performers, and we shouldn't just relegate ourselves to one little, genre and only try and learn from, what did Vernon do?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I'd like to comment on. When I see young performers and they're copying other acts and they're, I always look at them this way. I was young once too, and I did the exact same thing. And I think it's all part of the process. If they're like 30 years old and they're still doing, still copying whoever, it's like, okay, you are in the wrong business. This is not for you.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was in high school, I was trying to talk like Harry Blackstone. You can call me Mr. MacDonald. I'm like, 16 years old trying to act like that. And I was like, it's like, I think that's just part of it. And copying another entertainer or their style is one way of understanding what good looks like and what good might feel like. And if you're an honest entertainer, you would go, okay, this isn't wrong, but how can I make it my own? And that's how you kind of mold it. And this is where I think it's incumbent upon veterans like us, is that when they see young kids that are, because they're in their beginning phases when they're doing that, is that we can't look down on them for doing that because they're at least, giving an effort. But we got to look at them and go, okay, pull them aside and say, all right, this is good, but there's somebody else that's more interesting than who you're doing right now, and challenge them and help guide them that way. Just like you were saying, is that they need guidance. But I've seen so many magicians just kick young kids in the teeth. Not literally, but just like make them feel like crap for just trying. So I think that's something that we need to do a little bit more of, is be a little bit more inclusive and say, okay, you're doing this, you're copying this person. Why are you copying that person? Just start off with that. Why are you doing David Blaine? It's like, and maybe he or she probably may not even know that they're doing David Blaine. So it's all part of that. It's like growth. You have to start somewhere, and it's like the guy that invented a better bicycle had to start with a bicycle.
Yes. Well, it's funny because like in other career paths, I know I took business for a while and stuff in school, and I would always talk about having mentors and stuff. And then I went into religion and theology and still talked about having a mentor and stuff. And in magic, it doesn't come up as often. I think people say, oh, I have a mentor, but most of the time it's like, oh, I have a group of friends I chat with or something like that, where I think like, now I know in magic, I have a few mentors that I, reach out to constantly. And I'm like, and I've asked them like, can you be my mentor? can I run through things with you? You know, can you push me in different directions and stuff? But I think, like you said, with young kids in magic, it doesn't really happen that much. And I don't know if it's because they just don't have the know-all to ask people for that, or if it's also the older generation going, I don't know how to mentor someone, like, because they didn't get mentored, or you know, it just hasn't gotten passed down that way. But I think it's so important to help kids develop and stuff to become better. So
yeah, it's a cultural thing. In Europe, it's a lot easier.
Mhm.
In America, you got to be careful. You know, you got these helicopter parents. It's like, what are you doing talking to my kid? You know,
Yeah,
how dare
yeah.
you say so and so? It's like if they want to ask, you know, you have to wait for them to ask. But what kid knows what questions to ask? It's so
Yeah.
weird. You know,
It is, right?
it's tough. But yeah, I don't know. It's a conundrum. You know, one of the things that I find too is that in like Blake, is it Blaze? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Blaze. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect.
Is that when you see, because it sounds to me like you're really into theater character development as well.
That's my background before magic. Yeah.
Okay, so do you? Does it drive you nuts like me when you see a person who knows better when they think I am a character, but all they do is they just put on a costume and it just turns out to be a theme, and they're just doing an act that they haven't really understood what they're doing. But it's the same way as it's the same way as a magician going and buying a trick off the shelf and then putting on, let's just say, a 1930s gangster outfit and trying to talk like they're from Chicago, and they're going to do a gangster routine with a square circle, and I don't know. I see more and more and more of that, and I think it's because the acts that you're about to start seeing coming from Europe and even Canada have a more theatrical theme to them, and actually have trained actors like yourself that are putting more meaning into their act. And then you see these other acts kind of slip in and copying, like you were saying, and going, this is I'm just going to jump in on this bandwagon. I'm going to be this. And it fails miserably, and it makes magic suck so bad.
Yeah, I think especially well, yeah, and I think maybe it's the thing where I guess people have a natural inclination that if they see someone successful or someone doing something right that they admire, then they try to imitate what they admire, you know, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. But one point that you were bringing up, yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying. I don't want to lose it. What was I'm off track? Was the fact that I just completely lost what I was about to say.
They put on a costume.
You guys just watched the experience of a thought go, because I started going in a different direction. Yeah. Okay, I'm just trying to go back through what you're saying. So there's a few things. What I was going to say was I think when people see something like in and of itself getting a lot of praise and success, people start feeling as though they need to inject theatricality into their performance just for the sake of being able to say that they're doing a theatrical performance, or just for the sake of saying, you know,
Right.
that, like, I'm doing a story, I'm doing a narrative. But the thing is that it really has to be created kind of in a top-down fashion, you know, where you have this vision for something that is theatrical and tells a story and is a narrative, and then the magic and everything is created in order to tell that narrative. It's very you see a lot of times where it's like, here were a bunch of tricks that I have, and this was my act, and I tried to force this story in to try and connect things, but then you end up feeling just as disjointed as if you were to go and for my next trick, it's like your transition maybe isn't saying those words, but it has that same kind of feel. And on your point before, also with, you'll see a lot of people try like what Mark just said. I guess I got to throw away my gangster costume. Mark was saying that is like, you'll see a lot of, even kids go like, oh, on my travels through the Orient, I got and like saying these kind of very antiquated lines that are just for the sake of adding some kind of story or justification for these unnatural props. But that takes people out of the moment so much. It's like people are trying to suspend their disbelief. They're trying to fall into the moment that you're creating for them and enjoy the theater and enjoy the magic and just be, being able to be along for the ride. But if you're just blatantly being dishonest with them, then it totally shocks them out of that, and now they can't be as present with you. It's interesting because you're doing a silent act. So your character is created by other things other than the words coming out of your mouth, but rather it's the ambiance, the costuming, the the setting, and then your mannerisms and your pantomime abilities. So in that sense, like, people are able to really fall into it because I think that at the beginning, especially because you're not talking, there's this curiosity of they're discovering along with your character the rules of this world and what's happening, which is really beautiful, rather than trying to just go like, oh, I'm going to do a bunch of money production tricks and then just try and throw a story in as an afterthought. I'm sure that the act wouldn't have come to where it is now and be FISM level if you had done that perspective, that approach.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So,
yeah, you said it even better, way better than I did. That's with your theater background.
I totally lost what I was saying in the first place. We eventually got it back.
It's
It's hard not to come across pompous when we talk about storytelling and how magic should be, but it's not being pompous. It's about because sometimes I feel like I might come across pompous, and it's like, it's not at all. It's about advancing the art. It's about doing something that magic has been struggling to do for its entire existence, and that is to be a legitimate art form. And we're getting closer. And so in and of itself is a perfect example. And even what is it? The one, I forgot his name, from the Geffen Theater.
Elder.
Yeah.
Elder.
Yeah.
He just shows the Geffen. I don't know if you were thinking of somebody else, but
no, that's the one, Felder's. And his show is, got a really nice a story element to it. But yeah, everybody wants to talk about their grandfather. My grandfather told me this, and my grandfather told me that. I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
But
Here
I think that just as we're going to be seeing a lot of acts, as you were saying, from Europe and things, that are much more theatrical, we're also going to start seeing a lot of discount Delgadios, where we've just got people trying to imitate
discount Delgadios. I was in Italy listening to him. He was getting an award at Masters of Magic, and he was sitting there and he said, what's happening out there in the showroom right now, that's what's wrong with magic. And there was just this ruckus going on. There was 2,000 people in this convention, and he said, it's just guys sitting around a table just demonstrating tricks to each other. And he said, that's what's wrong. And I started listening a little bit more, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And I think what we're just now starting to see, or until the pandemic hit, is we are seeing professional actors, professional directors, professional producers. Frank Oz. He was the director and producer of In and of Itself. And you're seeing dancers who are professional dancers. And I don't know if I mentioned professional actors. I probably did. But anyway, you're seeing people from the real art field, the real arts, the people that have gone to Juilliard and have learned all of these wonderful skills, and then they see magic for the first time, like probably on America's Got Talent, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've been blown away. This is a skill set that could actually set me apart.
Mhm.
And then boom, look at Beetlejuice. Have you seen some of the scenes in Beetlejuice? Mike Weber, some of the work that he did there? Unbelievable. And the actor is doing most of the magic, even sleight of hand. Unbelievable. So it's coming. It's invading our world. These pros are coming in, and we have to step up to that level. And if we don't, we're just going to be, spinning our wheels on the treadmill going, why am I not famous?
That brought a question to mind, which is that something I remember speaking with Whit Hayden, who people know as Pop Hayden, about is he was talking with me about how I have to remember who he was necessarily quoting or referencing in this moment, but he was saying that whenever you have a theatrical magic piece, then either the magic has to be kind of sublimated to the theater, or the theater has to be sublimated to the magic, or one has to kind of serve the other and be beneath the other. What do you feel within your act is kind of like, is dominant in that sense? Is it the magic that's dominant, or is it the story, and then the magic is there to feed the story? Obviously the magic's very strong because it's a FISM worthy act, but what do you feel is that kind of balance?
It's the story for sure. Because as soon as the curtains open, I've intentionally made it so that I don't enter for 10 seconds. So I want the audience to kind of get a sense of what's happening, what the scene looks like. And it's dark, and it's got a lot of blues, and you hear thunder and all of that. And the table looks kind of spooky. It's got a skull on it. You can see it behind the chair there, and so it's like, what? So it creates this curiosity of like, what is this? And then I peek around the curtain, and I've got the 3-candle candelabra, which is very iconic in haunted themed movies. So I come out and I just pause for a second and I look around, and then I start entering into the scene. And that is in the first 15 seconds. So nothing has happened yet, but it creates so right there, no magic. The magic is not important. It's the story. And as the character comes in, I treat it exactly like a play. When the curtain opens on a play, like if you were to look at what is it? Any play. Let's pick Phantom of the Opera. One of the first things that you see when you come into the auditorium is a burnt up theater, all disheveled. Yeah. And then you go back in time, and the chandelier comes down, and everything's brand new. And it's like, what did we just see? That was amazing. And so the first character in that is you are in a magical time. You are looking back in time, which is really interesting. So so I think that it's really important for the audience to see my set first before I come on. So it's the story.
Absolutely. Which is amazing to hear, that like, even though it's a magic act that's going to go to the Olympics of magic, it is the story that comes first. And that's the most important thing.
100%. 100%. I wouldn't be different if it was a magic act. I would be like everybody else. It has to be story driven or nothing for this act.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to talk about Richard Preston, that's completely different. But yeah, that for this particular thing, it is I would say it's an immersive experience. And I'll give you one story. This one guy, I got in an argument with a guy. It was after I won the combined convention, and he said, how on earth do you travel with that castle? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, yeah, you have a castle as a set. It was gigantic. And I said, I only have a table and a mirror. I didn't see a castle there. He said, no, there was a set. Do you have a semi truck or something? It's like huge. And I said, in that moment, I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. And this was in 2017. The act has progressed way beyond that. And I immediately thought one of the most important things when you're creating a story-driven act such as this is that you have to go to a place that's somewhat familiar to people. And I knew that I was going to tap into that when I decided to do something that was like an old black and white movie. We've all seen those. And to him, he was placing me in his mind in a castle. So his memory was filling in the blank of the black backdrop.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, now I know that we're doing something right. So that's the power of doing that.
Wow. Or he was just on drugs. That's the other option.
Yeah.
He was swaying a little bit.
Yeah.
Not to discredit. It was still a really great show.
Backdrop.
He was doing this a lot too. And
Yeah.
I would love to hear about Richard Preston. What were you going to say, Ryan?
Oh, I was going to say, first, it was funny that you brought up like kids saying like, oh, as I traveled the Orient and stuff. I remember, so one of my neighbors was over tonight, and he watches Magic After Dark every week with his two sons. And I was telling him about yourself. And I said, he's competing in FISM and stuff. And so they had a bunch of questions like, what is FISM? Like, how do the routines work and stuff like that. And I said that I had judged the contest at Tannen's Magic Camp. And so it's all these kids that are competing. And it was crazy because it was the first time I had seen like a really intense, I guess. It's intense for them. Like these kids practice all year for these content. Like this is their Olympics, right? But that was my biggest thing. I think I said to so many kids was they would come in the room to get critiqued, and I'd go, how old are you? And they're like, oh, I'm 12. And I'm like, why are you doing a cigarette act?
Ooh,
it's just like, why do you have cigarettes? And then there were some kids or guys that were like 17, 18 that look like they're 14, and they're doing this, put on the suit. And like you said, the gangster outfit kind of, and it was like, they become this different person. And I was like, it's not you. Like you look 14. You can't pull this off right now. Like come back in 10 years. This may suit you, but right now it doesn't. Like who you're trying to capture is this different character that's not you. But it led me to thinking, because I don't know this answer. Do you have a name for your character?
Richard Preston.
But Richard Preston, is that not your other? That is this guy.
This,
right? There we go.
There we go. All right. And it's interesting. See, this is how the universe works. Richard Preston became Richard Preston because when he was younger, he had inherited a mansion that was donated to a long lost relative. This is like in 1936. And he when he got this mansion, he found a room that was locked and nobody knew that it existed. And he entered the room. There was no electricity in this old abandoned mansion. And this event is the beginning of Richard Preston. This is how he learned how to be a magician.
Whoa.
I connected those two during the pandemic. I'm like, this mirror act could be the reason why Richard Preston became. And it's like, wow, the connection actually works. The art works. So yeah.
Well, because that's what because I always knew there's Stuart MacDonald and then there's Richard Preston, and I was like, okay, but I didn't know if this act was Stuart MacDonald, and then it was like the new act because I had only seen it during COVID, and which I also got to ask you about some of your building projects because I know you've been in the shop building like a madman as well, which I love. But then I thought you had created a whole new character, just kind of for the virtual audiences. But it's cool to hear that you've connected both.
That's great that you've connected it all into one. We also have a question from Stefan, slightly Stefan. He's just joining us. How you doing, Stefan?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can everybody hear Stefan?
Hi. My name's Stefan. Is this Mr. Stuart MacDonald on?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, sir. Awesome. I didn't make sure there was like a delay or anything. So I got a question in regards to structure of routining. For example, like I can see you have a large stage presence when you're performing on stage. So I got a quick question. So how do you know if a good trick is, or let me rephrase that. How do you know if a trick that you're perhaps practicing or currently practicing in the mirror is good structure-wise, and how do you work out the tweaks when going towards a show? Like, for example, how would you know a trick has a really good structure on it before it's performed on stage in front of a large group of people?
You don't know. Especially when you're inventing something like the mirror. You don't know until you get it in front of people. Nothing is invented in a vacuum. It's like I'll tell you how I knew I had something is I was rehearsing in front of a. I have a big window, big mirror on a door in the bedroom, and I was practicing with a billiard ball, and I dropped it, and my hand picked up the billiard ball, and I was holding onto the billiard ball behind the door, and my hand was empty, and I'm like, and I thought I was looking at my other hand for a brief moment, and I go, oh, wow, that is weird. I'm rotating my hand. I'm holding onto a billiard ball here, but it's like this phantom effect, like I didn't have a ball in the other hand. And so I brought my wife in and I taped a ball to the back of the door, and I held one ball in one hand and I just picked the other ball off the other one. It was like, what the? That's how it started.
So it sort of like experimenting, kind of like by accident. Yeah,
it really is, especially when you're inventing something that's new, that you can officially call it your own. You start with a concept, and starting with a concept is really, really difficult. And for me, it was the mirror. And then from the mirror, we progressed to, okay, how does the mirror start? And then what kind of elements can we use to help guide the story so that all the things that happen before the mirror happens, they all interlink together so that the beginning, the prologue, actually makes sense for the epilogue, and that's how I structure it. It's really not a. I mean, I'll tell you what. You can take anything from a magic shop off the shelf and tear it down and break it down into an effect that has purpose and meaning if you give it time and your own spin. That's really about the best answer I can have for you. Is just like you just have to understand what the concept is, and then make it new and interesting. And that's just getting it in front of people and experimenting with different thematic elements.
So you just kind of try something, have an idea beforehand, and try it, see how it works with the audience, and then it's like, all right, well, let's try something a little bit different, and just kind of keep working it and continually going back and forth in front of an audience?
I can give you a quick demonstration of how you can take an element like a mirror and make it something different. This cloth right here is what started the whole story about making it a haunted effect, a haunted routine. I was talking to a guy, he's from my hometown. His name is Tobinos, but he just happens to be a prolific production designer. He's worked with Steven Spielberg. He's been a Tony nominated and all of that. And I knew he was from my hometown, and so I reached out to him and I said, I want to be in the World Championships of Magic, and I've got this mirror thing, but I don't know where I'm going with it. And he called me right away, like 10 minutes after I had Facebooked him. And he said, Stuart, I want to help you. And I go, I can't afford you. And he said, no, I want to pay you back. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, when I was in the 5th grade, you brought me up on stage and you did the cut and restored rope. You're the person who introduced me to theater.
Crazy.
So I have a Tony nominated guy that gave me this really interesting idea. He saw that I had the mirror covered with a cloth that was paisley. And he said, so why is it paisley? And I said, it just looks old. And he goes, it looks like a carpet bag was just like unfolded. It doesn't look like anything. And he said, what if it was like a drop cloth? And he goes, almost like an attic. This could almost be kind of haunted, don't you think? And then, and it just so happened to be that it was just after Halloween. And that cloth that I held up just a second ago was on sale. And it's this like old, drop cloth that is just ratty and just gross looking. It's all falling apart. And that's how the act was transformed by just replacing a cloth. And the light bulb went off just by doing that. One thing, one element. So to answer your question, sometimes it only takes one element to launch an idea into a whole nother spectrum. And that always happens by accident.
So just always be open to new ideas. Thank you so much for the question, Stefan. That was a great question.
No problem. I like the answer. All right. No. Bye. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. All right. No, that's fun. So so basically you just keep yourself open to discovering new parts of the act or to being able to, find a new angle to approach it from, or is it just like, do you keep just asking questions, why is the mirror doing this? Where is it coming from? And then try and answer them.
Yeah. And sometimes you paint yourself into a corner. Like when I started in May, I said, what if I didn't have a table? Could I do the wand act and the stuff that I do with my glasses? Could I do all of that without the table and just travel with a mirror? How convenient would that be? How much nicer would my life be if I just traveled with a mirror? And by doing that, I was like, okay, I painted myself into a corner. How am I going to do that? And by doing that, I reinvented the wand act so that it almost worked. And for about 2 weeks, but by doing it, I invented like 3 dynamite solid effects because I had painted myself in that corner. And the rule of keeping them in, did it advance the story, or did it create a stop sign where I could veer this way or veer that way, or because there's a lot of times that we have a moment in the act where it's like it solidly stops the act and you have to restart everybody all over again. You always want to have something that propels the act to the next phase, to the next thing, like peeling an onion. It's like you don't want to peel an onion and then run into a banana. It's like now you got to deal with this darn banana. And so what that experiment did by eliminating the table and finding out what could I do without the table created a whole slew of new ideas that I had never expected. So sometimes you have to challenge yourself, not just by asking the question of why, but eliminating things that you essentially need, and then go, what could I do to replace that need and still come across with the same effect? And you'd be surprised what you come up with. You might be traveling with a lot more stuff than you ever thought that you needed.
I always make the analogy that if you were in school and you were handed a few blank pieces of paper, and the teacher said, you have an hour, write something, your time starts now. That would be infinitely more difficult than the teacher giving you the stack of paper as well as a prompt and saying, write for an hour. This is your essay prompt. This is what you have to write about. And there's still infinite possibilities of what you could write about and how you could interpret that prompt, but that those infinite possibilities have a focus to them, and your creativity becomes focused rather than being out in a million different directions, where it becomes so difficult to just get started and make any progress when you don't have something that's limiting you in some sense. And those limitations can actually unlock those possibilities. So that's really interesting that you intentionally limited yourself and said, oh, wouldn't it be so great if I could pack lighter and not have to bring all of this stuff that I thought was necessary for my act. And then you realize, oh, well, it turns out this isn't necessary, and this is an even better method than I had before. And so that's great.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I brought it all back.
That is the single reason I started doing mentalism instead. It was working for an illusionist, and we carried almost 25,000 pounds of equipment to every show. Lighting rigs and soundboards and huge illusions. And I was really into doing illusions at that point. And I was like, this is super inconvenient to have to rent places and hire a team of 6 guys to, lug all this stuff in and rent a van and all this other stuff. And I said, I was already doing mentalism at the time, but that's when I really, I was kind of in between, I was doing some stage illusions, but wanted to start dabbling in mentalism and stuff, and kind of added a little bit into the show. And then I was like, no, let's sell the illusions. Let's get rid of them. Some of them I just burned. I was like, these are just garbage. And went fully into mentalism because I was like, I want to be able to put everything in a backpack and travel around the world doing what I love. And it made me think about things so much different because, with magic, it's very visual. There's so many visual elements. Where with mentalism, at least when I started, there was nothing basically that was visual. It was so incredibly, I'll say it was incredibly boring. And that was the rap that mentalism had, was that it's boring. One of my best friends, I said to him, come and see my show. And he said, no, you do mentalism. It's boring. I don't want to see it. And it took him a couple of years before he came and saw my show. And then he went, oh, okay, mentalism isn't boring anymore.
Right.
But he was so used to it just being, just standing on stage talking and here's a billet and, or whatever. But it pushed me to think outside the box so much on that stuff. So, yeah, I absolutely love that.
Yeah. Mentalism is a very chatty. It
can be, yeah.
It can be a very chatty art form. Yeah.
I remember Franz Harari, when he had the House of Magic, said I was working with him on a TV show in Atlanta when he was building it, and he said, "Oh, you should come over and do an act." And I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds fantastic." And he said, Kyle and Misty and stuff are going. I said, "So what do I need to do? What do I need to create?" And he's like, "A 10-minute silent mentalism act." I was like,
silent mentalism act?
Yeah, because they wanted
fun.
So I said, so not like nothing. I do telekinesis and just make things move in the room, and that's basically it. Because and I said, well, couldn't I just learn like my script in Chinese? And that was not a possible. Like they were like, nope, nope, this is what they like here, and it's it has to be big show stuff, but like very little words, like maybe a couple words, and that's it. And I was
Wow.
like, all right, I may not be your guy. That was putting the parameters a little bit too crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and I don't know that any mentalists ever went and did the show there.
Mark
Yeah,
said,
that's-
"Yeah, force people to play hangman with you."
Yeah, exactly.
You just silently with a whiteboard trying to guess the
Right.
letters.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, it was. I thought about it for a while. I was like, what could I do 100% silent that is deemed mentalism instead of magic, and yeah, that's where it became really tough.
Well, I'll tell you, Zoom really did a number on magicians, but I think it also helped magic because the number one thing that a magician needs is a live audience. And you eliminate the live audience. Now what does a magician do? And if you really think about it, we were one of the first people to really innovate on Zoom. And most entertainers followed us because we are always, magicians usually love new technology. And think of all the interesting mentalism that came out of Zoom.
Oh yeah.
That can be adapted to a large stage. Some of the black art stuff that came out of Zoom that you could still do in a theater.
Yeah, no, 100%. That was probably one of the tougher things though with Zoom is I found a lot of magicians turned to doing mentalism online. So then because they were like, oh, Mike, I don't want to do a show of just doing card work and stuff, right? And so then it was like, I was getting calls from magicians that were like, hey, can you give me some hints or give me some ideas on mentalism routines that I can do? And I was like, oh no, now we're creating a whole new breed of mentalists. And a couple, I know a couple of guys that over the last couple of years have seen, mentalism is on the up, I guess, with popularity and stuff, and they've dropped doing magic, and now they're doing more mentalism in their shows than anything. And so I think probably the whole Zoom world probably pushed that even more in that direction because people were like you said, there was probably more mentalism created for Zoom than there was magic created for Zoom, I would say.
Yeah. I one of the things that I wanted to do when I started Richard Preston was that I didn't want to be a Zoom mentalist because that's not something that Richard would do. So as I created Richard's world and his past story, I was struggling with what on earth am I going to do? And I found out that you could do pretty much standard magic, and it's just as strong over Zoom. And especially when I would do a themed show, like Richard Preston would do like a Christmas special, and I did an invisible deck where the invisible deck was in a stocking hanging over my fireplace, and it was a gift that was given to me by somebody from the audience that I had goaded into. I demonstrated how Richard became famous by doing a trick over the radio that was like mentalism, and I actually do the invisible deck without a deck. And I did it like a radio show. And so I just had the person from the audience say, and what was the name of your card? And I just, and they say 8 of diamonds. And it's the 8 of diamonds. And then, and I'm doing the trick for the audience. And they're like, what the heck is going on? It doesn't make any sense. And then I go, oh, you know what? One of the traditions that we have at the Richard Preston household is we open one gift early, and it's usually in the stocking. And then I take out this wrapped deck of cards, and it's the 8 of diamonds that the person had. So it's like, rethinking like something as simple as the invisible deck, but making it fit within the atmosphere that that Richard was in. Was kind of fun and challenging, but that's still kind of like a mentalism piece. But I found that Richard could do so much more than just because I was doing really wild stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Zoom really did challenge us a lot, and it made us made a lot of Zoom mentalists. And I think what's going to happen once we go live is that some of these Zoom guys are going to struggle because they got really good at Zoom, but I don't know how that they're going to be able to recapture some of the stuff that they were doing. Like they were doing stuff like was just out of camera range. Like, is this your, how much? And it was like, come on, guy. But the audience didn't know that what they were doing.
Yeah. No, it's very true. It is interesting because I mean, magicians, mentalists have been able to get like, I love Mark's comment says with giant anagrams on their walls, right? And it was like, yeah, you could. I mean, I don't have anything on my wall here, but I know guys that they have sheets all over the place and stuff, or it's on their other monitors and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, this is this, and I'm like, you don't have that on stage. Like, why are you relying on this now? Like, shouldn't you just be practicing for being on stage so that when you go back, you're ready to go? Like, you can add that in if you want to and stuff. But yeah, you are right. This stuff here, like, does not work in the real world, unfortunately. I mean, there is ways to do it for sure, to do similar things, but yeah, it's definitely a lot tougher.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it's just like people, wherever they have their practice or wherever they're used to performing, that medium, that stage, and trying to convert that to a different stage. You'll see a lot of close-up guys that struggle to do a stage theatrical show or vice versa. And you'll see a lot of social media guys that can't perform live, and also a lot of live performers that don't know how to do magic on social media. It's just like, trying to master those different stages. Each one is their own animal.
Like I said, I mentioned before we started that I did a walk around gig last night, and I immediately called Anya after, and I said, "Oh my goodness, it was amazing!" Like, I had kept everything COVID safe, so I wasn't like near people, didn't have them touch anything, so I had to. So just even those parameters, going back, getting things ready, I was like, okay, what can I do that they don't have to touch anything? But I can still do mentalism or magic to them. And so that was interesting, just that framework of do a trick for someone that they don't have to touch anything, but that you still build a relationship, that you still talk to them. And it's not like, hey, look at my gum packet, click, and it changes, none of that stuff. But I was like, so that,
but again,
just
it's
that parameter around it.
Yeah, it's the same concept of painting yourself in the corner, like eliminating, like that. Like I said, that table. It's like we had to relearn, and you were saying pretty much the same thing. It's amazing what you can do when you have to eliminate one essential element, and then you come up with something even better.
Yeah, I feel like for the people that follow me here, like in the viewers or whatever, especially in the magic community, most of the stuff that I've released came out of creating a limitation for myself. And that limitation was, how much can I do with only one hand? And so it was just like, I'm going to just eliminate the other hand that would normally be essential for all of these different sleights or routines or techniques, and see what I can create that's all one-handed. And then ended up just kind of making a ridiculous amount of material that all revolved around that and those different techniques, and it kept branching out more and more and more. But it was like it all stemmed from just that initial idea of I'm just gonna limit myself, and through that limitation comes adaptation and creativity. So
Oh yeah, I immediately got home last night and was like, what can I do next time that will be better than this? Like I already people were already freaking out last night, and I'm like, this was great. It was a ball being out again in the public, but I was like, I could make this better. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's throw out all this stuff. Let's, create some new stuff. So, I mean, I'm excited for it to be back, but I like that it's a slow transition, because I'm sure the first time back on the full big stage will be daunting.
I have my first time back on stage on the 14th of October. So a little over a month to get ready to do a proper stage performance. Because it's been just close-up gigs in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
But Stuart, did you say earlier when we asked your favorite color that it was purple?
Yes.
Well, we happen to have something purple that we'd like to share with you. It's a segment of the show, and the graphic, just like the previous graphic was red, this one's purple. And usually, we say, I think it's time for purple. So
that time for purple.
I think it's about that time. It's going to happen whether we choose. I'm not going to click anything.
Lasagna! Lasagna! What's your favorite genre of lasagna? Meat. Lasagna. Veggie. Lasagna. Plain. Lasagna. Saucy. Lasagna. What's your favorite genre of lasagna?
The age-old.
I like those 80s graphics.
The graphics.
In the very 80s, very MTV 80s.
Oh yeah.
Couldn't you see that on a t-shirt? Just have a big, what's your favorite genre of lasagna?
It's coming soon.
Lasagna.
Coming soon. I've been working all week on new t-shirt designs for lasagna.
This brings us to our most important question of the night, Stuart, which is, what's your favorite genre of lasagna?
I didn't know lasagna had genres. I would say,
genre.
Of course it does.
A 3-meat lasagna.
3
meat, 3 cheese lasagna. There you go.
Now, can we go a little further and ask what the meat choices are?
Which meat? That was exactly what I was thinking. Right.
Chicken, sausage, and ground beef.
Chicken lasagna,
and ground beef.
Okay, interesting. I would have thought maybe like ground beef, sausage, and maybe like pancetta or something like that. Like,
I'm not that sophisticated. You got to remember, I'm very pedestrian.
Yeah.
I don't even know what type of animal pancetta stems from. Is that also cow?
I'm just thinking more, or like even like pepperoni, like just all in that kind of, or pork, something like sausage and ground beef.
Mayhaps.
But chicken kind of goes like totally against the other two, I thought.
I mean, I think it's out of turn for us to disparage his favorite genre.
It is, but gotta ask, gotta push him a little bit, right?
I know.
Well, yeah, you gotta
so far.
I mean, I just invented a brand new genre of lasagna.
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah, taste test this thing.
3-meat lasagna.
3 meat, 3 cheese. Oh wait, what are the types of cheese? Because now we got to see if they correspond.
So you have trifecta lasagna. We got 3 meat cheese. You have the full trifecta.
Gouda, sharp cheddar, and mozzarella.
Nice.
Okay.
No, gotta have the classic.
You've redeemed yourself.
Zero Parmesan. Wow.
0 Parmesan.
Okay, interesting.
It wouldn't be 3 anymore. It wouldn't be the trifecta anymore there's no room.
Yeah, are there 3 different styles of noodles? Because then it is a perfect triangular trifecta. 3 noodles, 3. Well, I guess there's sauces.
But... Yeah, by the way, Steve Valentine's favorite genre of lasagna is triangular. as we learned. So
Also a trifecta. Yeah.
also a trifecta. So if you, depending on how you cut this lasagna in the end, you could make a perfect trifecta.
Yeah, well, you're going to start with macaroni noodles on top.
Yeah.
In place of the Parmesan. Of
gotta
course.
have the macaroni noodles.
And then you're going to have the standard sheet lasagna noodle in the middle, and then the third noodle spaghetti. There you go.
Straight up spaghetti.
Line it up like a carpet of spaghetti.
Wow.
I love it. You intertwine it.
Bam. So it's like you're eating a lasagna and spaghetti at the same time.
Wow. See, through limitation brings creativity.
See,
Once we put ourselves that it must be a trifecta, it suddenly became so much more interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Texture, variety.
That's the trifecta variety, yeah.
And very odd.
So we always have a follow-up question for that.
Okay.
So Richard, now I'm calling you Richard, Stuart. If you baked one perfect trifecta lasagna,
The trifecta is going to change this follow-up. It's a whole new variable.
It is very challenging. And you baked a second trifecta lasagna, and you placed said second one atop of the first one. How many lasagna do you have? 1 or 2?
You would have one.
Oh, interesting.
One
guy.
One gigantic. I mean, you're talking about like when you slice it, it's going to be like this.
It's a big slice.
That's a real trifecta. I mean, well, so if you have one trifecta, so that's 1, 3, one trifecta, and a second trifecta, they somehow merge to become one.
Right.
One interwoven trifecta. And then it's sliced in triangular shape. Call it a day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't get any better than that.
Can't get any better than that. I think you grossed yourself out in the middle when you started talking about having macaroni and spaghetti in it.
It's like then we got spaghetti bottom, and he's thinking, would I really eat that?
Like it's gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
Well, of course. Well, the thing is, the sauce goes to the bottom. Yeah, I mean, the spaghetti, it's made for it. So it's like a mop.
It is true.
I mean, how do you even count layers anymore if you have a layer of spaghetti? That's not a sheet. That's like a.
They have those. They have the flat. They have the flat version of spaghetti that's kind of flat. You know.
Are you referring to lasagna?
No, I mean it's like the noodle, the flat noodles.
Correct. Yes. No, you're right. Oh, yes. So they could all just be perfectly in a line, and we'd end up with a beautiful trifecta. Yeah. This is a real magic podcast. This is what it is. This is where it doesn't get any better than this.
I don't think it can get any better.
This is by far our favorite segment every episode. It has become a staple, and what we're known for, really. It's lasagna.
Oh, really?
Not much magic talk that comes out of this whole podcast.
You need to actually make one of these trifectas that these guys come up with, and girls, and actually, you guys have to eat one of our trifectas during a segment. That I would like to see.
I may try to make yours. I don't think it's possible, but we got
physics is really off.
It really is.
And then noodles, and then macaroni on top.
It's a horror show.
But yeah,
But you have to grate the macaroni in place of Parmesan, right? Because we couldn't have the Parmesan there. Doesn't fit in the threes.
Isn't it tradition in Canada to put ketchup on macaroni and cheese?
No.
Must.
Really?
Have you ever done that?
You've never done it?
Oh, it's delicious.
Bro, yeah.
That's a thing?
Yeah. I thought it started in Canada.
Oh, yeah, 100%. That's how I grew up eating macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
Ketchup on top. I eat ketchup on everything now, but or I used to. But here's another thing I think started here, and only because every time I've said it in America, people like lose it as well. Chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
What sauce do you guys use to dip?
Oh man. Well,
Honey mustard.
honey and barbecue.
See,
Yeah.
you live close enough, I think, to Canada, Stuart, that honey would be an answer, but like just straight honey is the best to dip chicken nuggets.
100%.
No.
Blaze is
So
in it.
not honey mustard. You're talking about
No.
straight beehive right
Straight
now.
beehive honey.
Yeah, and if you go down south, it's if you can imagine this, and I've never had it, it's waffles and chicken.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
chicken
Yeah,
waffles,
waffles and
yeah.
chicken. Yeah. There's like
Yeah.
Roscoe's chicken and waffles is like a whole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the syrup on it. I can't imagine what the syrup would be like. The maple
So
syrup.
great.
on it.
Maple syrup,
So
right?
good. So good.
Okay, so the thing is that I don't have the same visceral reaction to the idea of chicken and waffles with maple syrup. I think that just like goes together. It just makes sense. But like honey, chicken nugget dipped into honey, I just feel like the honey would be so it would dominate the flavor, right?
No, it's like sweet.
No.
It's kind of like a sweet and sour without the sour.
Yeah, it's
think
like
about that.
so much better. But every time I go to the States, like I lived in Vegas for a little bit, and I was asking, like I wouldn't go to McDonald's all that often, but when I did, I'm like, oh, can I get honey? And some places don't even have honey. They're like, we have honey mustard. And I'm like, no, just like honey. Like that's
If I went to McDonald's and asked for honey with my chicken nuggets, they would just close the drive-through door in my face.
But you know what's great about this is we know that the next time Blaze has chicken nuggets, that he's getting honey with it.
You got to try it.
I'm 100% going to try it. I'm absolutely going to try it up to you guys.
Anya, my wife, I just had her try it like a couple days ago. And because she had these vegan chicken nuggets. And I was like, you got to dip it in honey.
And you're now divorced.
Pardon?
You're now divorced.
We're not divorced. Yeah, it's here. It's here.
Where'd the ring go? It was one nugget too far.
Yeah, but she tried it and she was like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, but definitely another Canadian thing. I mean, we have ketchup chips over here too. You guys don't have those.
I just learned that there's no such thing as the core of an apple. Like that, you know how you eat around the core of an apple and then you throw out the apple core? It's just because you're eating the apple from the wrong direction. If you eat it from the other direction, there is no core. You can eat the whole thing.
Even the seeds?
Yeah. So Adam Parisi, he was actually the winner of the 1v1 Magic tournament.
Yeah.
And the day that I gave him his hoodie, his prize and everything, and then I hung out with him and I jammed with him. And then he was like, yeah, as you know that there's no such thing as the core of an apple. Like that's just a myth. You can eat the whole thing. You just start at the bottom and eat towards the top instead of eating around the sides. And he just did it in front of me. And then I tried it and I was like, this is crazy. That blew my mind. We've been lied to. It's like the Berenstein Bears thing. It's like there's no core of an apple. Anyways.
Wow, man, I had no idea I was going to learn some stuff.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's not just any podcast.
Yeah.
This is not your normal one. That's for sure.
No, this is Magic After Dark. This is you gonna learn today.
You only missed out on a couple segments that were even crazier, Stuart. But we officially eliminated them a couple weeks ago. So
we did officially eliminate. Yeah.
I feel cheated.
You were saved, and you're kind of right in between our next segment starting. I think.
Oh, no, another one.
No, we haven't started it yet.
Yeah.
Should we tell him about it? Maybe he's down for it. I don't know.
Yeah, tell him about it. Yeah.
So
you said about and not a boot.
Yeah, I don't say a boot. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think Canadians say that.
Wait, do you say bag or bag?
Bag.
You say
Bag.
bag? Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Because like I know that like some areas of Canada, and then especially in like Montana, I remember in there I went to like CVS, and she asked me if I wanted a bag, and I was just like, bag? What? Like bagel? Like what are you talking about? So
Yeah, I think if you went like out east, maybe to like PEI, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, stuff like that. Newfoundland, you can't understand what a Newfie is saying any time of the day. If you get one that's like a really like born there, their accent is ridiculous. Like it just sounds like it's made up. It sounds like you're listening to someone trying to play a trick on you. But yeah, no, I always think I sound more American probably, but then people in America are like, actually, this was the best thing in Vegas. The guy said, you're not from around here. And I said, well, no, I live here now, but no, I'm not. And I said, how can you tell? He said, because you're so polite.
Yeah.
I said, what? And he goes, you said please and thank you for everything that you've gotten so far. He goes, people from Vegas don't do that. And that was funny.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that's fun about traveling is finding, you know, just what the local culture is like. You know, in America, we look at our culture as like we really don't have one, but locally we do.
Oh yeah.
Even by city, you know, it's amazing, you know, what some cities are like. Like Bay City, Michigan is like a world unto itself. It is so Polish. Holy smokes. And the amount of drinking that goes on there. The drink for everything in Bay City.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it is crazy. I mean, and like you said, big cities and stuff will have things like Chinatown or, you know, the Italian city. And so like, and it's crazy. Like you go to New York and you walk one street and it's a totally different world that you're in. Like,
Yeah.
and it's absolutely nuts. So, yeah.
But it gives you a profound respect for the world in general. You know, we tend to look at the world politically, especially now, but entertainers, we have a whole different spin on the world. We look at the world as people rather than countries and politics. And I find that the people are way more interesting than the politics or the country itself, because, you know, I can find an old building anywhere, you know, but I can't find that person. Like when I traveled to Sweden and did a convention there, the people were so amazing. They loved to practice their English on you, and they're like, no, don't try to speak Swedish. We know that language. We want to work on our English. And I'm like, cool, whatever. And wherever I went, it was the same thing, and everybody was just wonderful, and they were so good looking people. But you know, when you talk about you know, language and writing, probably the craziest looking, you know, Chinese is one thing, but I got to tell you, the Swedish language written is cryptic beyond.
Really?
Yeah, it's so weird looking.
We had Jackie Yu on a few weeks ago, and so Jackie was teaching us Korean, and people were writing questions in Korean, and we were just throwing them up on the screen. We said, Jackie, we hope that these people are saying things that are appropriate. So we have absolutely no idea. And so just toss them up and he would explain what it meant and stuff. But holy cow. And he is insane. Like that guy said he learned his act in like 7 or 8 different languages so that he could perform it wherever he went to lecture. Like just absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really inspiring when he was saying that. And in certain things, it wasn't even that he had a specific opportunity that was lined up. It was more like he wanted to be able to know the act in, what was he saying? Like he was going to do something in, was it Indonesia or something?
Yeah,
And
I think the only one that he didn't do, he said, I think it was German. He said, I think was too hard for him. He didn't learn it. Like he started to and said, I just can't pronounce this stuff. But other than that, he learned it. Well, he learned it in English first, I guess, and then like, was it Russian? I think, and French, and like, I think he said Italian, Spanish. I'm like just crazy.
Yeah, the I have a profound respect for the South Koreans. I mean, the amount of discipline that they have is honestly the impetus that inspired me to push myself farther. Yeah, they make you feel like I'm not doing enough. It's like
true.
maybe I got to learn another language.
Yeah, or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is crazy because I feel like all of North America kind of has that same attitude where it's like, okay, you know, and I don't know if it's like an attitude where it's like we're the best, you know, it's like look at where we are, we're the best. But then you see people around the world that their dedication to things just absolutely trumps, blows away everything that we're doing in North America.
And I can explain that. When I face planted in St. Louis in 2014, the South Koreans, I mean, there had to be a congregation of 40 of them that came. And the guy that brought them all was giving a lecture at some banquet, and I snuck in. I didn't pay for the banquet, but I didn't eat anything. I just wanted to hear what the guy had to say.
You have an invoice in the mail.
And he said, yeah, every one of these magicians that you saw in the competition, they can do each other's acts. And I'm like, what? They said, yeah, our internet speed in Korea is so good that, you know, instead of traveling and wasting time in gas and all of that, we communicate over the internet with each other. And as a team, we know each person's act so that when we invent and rethink magic, we're all rethinking it together. And so each person is going to have a different take, and we all help each other. And I was like, oh, well, that's the problem in the West, is that we are all lone wolves. We're like, this is my magic. I'm not going to share it with anybody. And that's one of the reasons why I opened up my rehearsals to people, is I did that long ago. As a matter of fact, it was like 2016 where I did a Facebook Live. I said, if anybody wants to come to my living room and watch me rehearse, and I just turned on my camera and I said, whatever happens is going to happen. And I did my act a couple of times, and there was 250 people watching. And I was getting all kinds of comments that I wasn't even asking for.
Yeah.
Like, there's something to this. And so I kind of left my act as sort of open source. And if any, I dropped all my ego, and I just decided that I wanted to make sure that I had no investment other than time. No emotion is connected to this act at all, other than, you know, I'm proud of what I've done. But I'm just the tip of a long spear of great ideas that people have given me along the way, and it keeps building as you know, as I perform and meet more people. But and I think that's one of the things that hinders, because I was on a podcast not that long ago, and somebody was asking, so why do most Western magicians not do well in FISM. And it's for that very reason. You cannot create in a vacuum. It never works unless you're Picasso, or a painter who learned from somebody else, right, on the shoulders of other people. But as a magic act, there's just too many variables. You've got lighting, you've got sound, you've got writing, you've got blocking, you've got the tricks themselves, the skill level. So many things are involved in it that you can't be a master of all of that because you can't see it like other people see it. And it is amazing to me when I was doing these live not auditions, but these live Zoom rehearsals, how many people were saying, "What an innovative idea." And I'm like, it's not innovative. I'm just letting you watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm allowing you to comment, not live, only privately, because I don't want it to be a discussion or a debate. It's very, because then it gets all weird. But the thing of it is that you have to be able to open yourself up that way to grow faster and allow these different opinions, because it's amazing how many ways people view this act. Some people are, they're like, "Oh, when you had this sound effect, it just took me out of the whole thing." Or they'll say, why did you pick up the wand first? You got to fix that. I'm like, okay, well, I'll fix that. But the sound effect, it's like, why is it bothering? I don't know.
Yeah.
It took them out for a second or two. And I'm like, well, then fine. You're out for a second or two. Moving on. Yeah. So I think as a sharp lesson to Western people is we have to get better at opening ourselves up to criticism and improvement, rather than saying, "This is mine. Nobody's going to change it."
I think that's another gold nugget, because I remember
absolutely a big mic drop right there.
I remember the first 3 shows I came up with. I wrote, produced, did everything for the first few, all the music, all lighting cues, like everything. And then I was working with Adam Blumenthal on a couple of things, and Adam does all the lighting for, I think the Castle Awards, but I didn't know at the time that he does like all these like Broadway stuff, and that's what he actually did, like, studied, and then he did Delgadio's show, and he's done a bunch of other shows. And I started talking to him about producing a show, my new show, and then he was like, "Oh, I'd love to help and do the lighting, and he wants to get more into directing and stuff." And then I said, "Okay," and we chatted back and forth on scripting and stuff. And then I reached out. Well, then me and Blaze met, and the kid's a genius as well. And so we've had a lot of writing sessions and stuff, or a few anyways, over Zoom, and just chatting about things and putting things into that box where we have one object in the show, and how many ideas can we come up with this object and stuff. And it's it's so much better for me. That's so much more inspiring. I know the show will be 10 times better than if I just did it myself. And so I would double backing on you, saying, like, if you are creating a show out there and you're not getting help from other people, you're going about it in the entirely wrong direction, because other people just see things that you don't see.
Yeah, and it has to be the right people too. It can't be people
100%.
that are going to pat you on the back. And,
no, exactly.
And it can't be just magicians.
Yeah.
It's got to come from all sources. I'll give you a quick example. When I first started this mirror act, the mirror was a vanity. The mirror was on top of the table, and my next door neighbor was an engineer, and his wife was a teacher, and so I would have him come over, and I would audition parts of the act for him. And so I did the mirror bit, and she's like, "Oh, it was very, very nice," and she left. And the husband stayed back, and he goes, because we had created a relationship with each other. And I said, "So tell me, really, what did you think?" And he goes, yeah, it was good, man. It was all right." And I said, "Come on, something's bothering you." And that's the birth of me asking, "What bothers you?" And he immediately gave me like 3 pages of notes because I said, "What bothered you?" And he
That's a
said,
great question to ask. Yeah.
yeah, because it gives you permission to criticize without saying, "Did you like this? Did you like that?" And it's
Yeah.
like, what bothers you gets right to the meat of the problem without any making anybody feel bad.
Yeah.
So
And the praise can end up being just a waste of time, you know? Like if you already
Oh, yeah.
believe and you know it's an act that's worth your time and you're gonna be committed to this thing, then you don't
Right.
need to hear a bunch of compliments. You know, it's like let's get to the actual thing we're trying to solve.
Yeah. If I would have stopped there, because this was a pivotal moment, and he just wouldn't open up, and then I asked him that question, and he said, "Well, she says that the act is stupid." And I'm like, what do you mean it's stupid? She said that all I was doing was I was picking things off the back of the table. And I go, "Oh, well, that's not the method." And he goes, "It's not?" And I said, "No, it has nothing to do with it at all." And I dismissed him, and I said, "Well, I've got an idea. I'll get back to you." So 3 weeks later, the mirror was off the table, and it was a standalone mirror. It was a mirror stuck between 2 sticks.
Mm.
And then I did it again for them, and she was completely blown away.
Mm.
So again, by eliminating the table, then we're just stuck with a mirror, and we've created something brand new. But if I hadn't have asked that question and pressed and see the angst on his face, you know, just like, "Just tell me," that you know, then it really worked. But I'll tell you, I don't know if you guys know the technique I use for building and improving my act. Are you guys familiar with lean and continuous improvement?
No, but this sounds fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I worked for Whirlpool. It's called the TPS. Have you ever watched the movie Office Space?
Yep.
The
Yes.
TPS report?
Yep.
Okay, that's the Toyota production system. Everything in that movie is real. The TPS is a real thing. The Toyota production system is how Toyota innovated the production line so that it was quality controlled beyond anything in America. And a matter of fact, Americans learned the Toyota production system and turned it into Lean Six Sigma. You've probably heard of Six Sigma. So I was certified at Whirlpool in lean and continuous improvement. I became the team leader for that. And this was in 2012, 2013, 2014. And then when I decided to get back into magic, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I could apply these techniques to magic and see what would happen? Now, up until 2014, I never put these two ideas together. But after my major failure, I said, I wonder if lean will work. And within 3 years, I won the combined convention and fooled Penn and Teller, and you know, the rest is history. Mm-hmm. So lean is a way of eliminating waste. Mm-hmm. And so you want to eliminate, think of it this way. You are the customer as the audience, and I am the supplier. So my job is to eliminate as many barriers to communication as possible between me and you. So What are those barriers? Wasted time, overproduction, complicated story plot lines, complicated blocking, you name it. All these different things. There's actually 7 wastes. There's a thing called TIMWOOD, which is an acronym for all the different wastes. So you dig deep into using this. It's actually an quality engineering principles, and I've applied them in a way that I'm actually now lecturing at corporations, showing them that you can apply the same techniques that you use in your manufacturing line to help your employees improve their lives outside of work, so that when you teach them lean and continuous improvement, it makes sense to them. And so I'm lecturing around America and in the UK because of Zoom about doing them. I actually did a TEDx for Detroit, and then I went on to Detroit Edison and taught them my technique. And so I've been able to, I applied it to Richard Preston. And if you think of it this way, Richard Preston wasn't even a year old, and he was put on a national TV show, Masters of Illusion. So I'm on Masters of Illusion as Stuart MacDonald and Richard Preston, and so the technique works, but it's just applying an engineering principle that's used in manufacturing in magic to make improvement faster.
So in practice, in the context of a magic routine, so there's the fact that it's continuous improvement. So each time you're constantly looking at it with going through it with a fine-tooth comb of what can be stripped away from this, what is extraneous, what is unnecessary. And
there is a method to that where it's like you go into and it's like a 4-box thing. It's like what is my goal, and did I achieve my goal? What went wrong, and what could I do to improve it? Those are the 4 boxes. And so if you're only working on like a 30-second part, you do what's called an after action review, and you ask yourself these questions: what was my goal? Did I, what went wrong? What went right? And what could I do to improve the process? And you keep doing this over and over and over again. It's more than just taking something and eliminating. Now, what you're doing it's called low-lying fruit. See it and fix it. Mm-hmm. But then as you fix something, have you ever fixed something and then you find out that you've got more problems that happen, that cascade off of the change that you've made?
Yeah, they elucidate themselves as you keep digging deeper.
Exactly. And so as those problems happen, then you approach it in the same way. Now there's another technique that's called 8D problem solving, and that was started by the Army. And 8D problem solving is a way where you first thing you do is you have to create a problem statement, and then you examine what the problem is and you attack it from every angle possible until you find out. It's called, there's several different ways that you can solve a problem. One of the best ways to do it is called 5 why, where you ask the question why 5 times. Why is, like, for instance, why is this cloth tattered and torn? But we got to that cloth because they asked, like Tobinos, like I said in that story, he said, why is it a paisley cloth? It's because I thought it was old. Why do you think it's old? Well, maybe it's a turn of the century. Okay, if it's turn of the century, that cloth is not turn of the century. So it's like you keep on. Using these techniques has really helped fine tune problem solving and waste management, and also helps with the communication between me and the audience, because every time you say something, it provides information to the audience, but it can also go over their heads or beside them. They'll miss it and they'll forget what their card is when you ask them later. There's all kinds of different things that create barriers when you're writing your act, that if you don't have these specific wasteful time management tools for your audience, they're all applicable. Yeah, so that's what I use. And so if you look it up, lean, LEAN, and continuous improvement, I use that.
Those are two separate things, two separate concepts. Lean is its own entity, its own process, and then continuous improvement is separate. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but they're often used together and I'll tell you,
I was hearing it at first as improvement that is lean and continuous. So I was like lean and continuous improvement as one thing, but gotcha. So
they do go together. When you're learning lean is its own process. Continuous improvement is its own process, but they go together because you're always trying to improve the process that you're leaning out. So it creates like an infinite circle of you lean out the process and then you improve it, and then you lean it out again and improve it, and you keep on doing this over and over again. One tip for you that helped me a lot, because magicians are stuck on what's the best trick, and there really is no best trick, but there is a trick to choosing a trick by using an analysis tool that's called process failure mode effects analysis. It's a mouthful.
That's a mouthful. I was going to say that's a mouthful.
A mouthful, but a whole lot of mic drops here. We're getting
So process failure mode effects analysis is that it's kind of like anticipating what can go wrong, will go wrong, Murphy's Law. So you take an act such as this, okay, which has a lot going on, and you go, okay, let's rate 1 through 5. If this trick fails, is it going to ruin the act? If it does, then it gets a high number. If it's at the beginning of the act, it automatically has a high number because the opening and the closing are very important to the audience. So you work through the act, and then once you find out which effects have the highest failure mode, that not only if it fails, but it also will kill your act. It'll ruin it. If you can identify what those are, you can say, okay, do I risk keeping this trick in the act, or do I eliminate it and not have to worry about that? Because if you think about it, you as a performer, if it fails, it's like when you're doing the trick, you're thinking, oh God, I hope this doesn't, fail. That's why I don't do the dancing cane anymore. All somebody has to do is just get a glimmer of the string, because the light hits it just enough that it's ruined. Or if the string breaks, then it's ruined. That's why I don't even mess with it anymore. And I did the failure mode with this act, and I got it down to one piece in the act that I'm like, oh my God, the whole act can fail with this one prop. But this one prop is so essential that it cannot fail.
Yeah.
So how do you get around that? Well, the first thing you do is that when you identify that this is an essential prop that has the highest probability of ruining your act, you have to ask, okay, what is the failure rate of this prop? How often will it fail? And you have to, so that can only happen by doing it over and over and over and over and over again. Like there's a reel that I have in my act that pulls something up my sleeve, and it's like if that fails, everything's going to suck for a long time in the act. It's very essential.
So you essentially have to do like a bunch of trial and error, and then kind of like statistical analysis on those trials to go, do I have enough data that I know about 30% of the time this is going to be an issue? And that's not okay if it's 30% of the time an issue.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna give you a long arch of a way to mitigate this. After this is gonna sound really weird, but after 9/11, I wanted to join the fight and retaliate, and I was too old to do that. So I became a firefighter, paid on call for our local community. That was my way of, if anything bad happens in our town, I'll be able to at least contribute in some way. So for 13 years, I was a paid on call firefighter, and doing magic and producing shows with, helping the fire department raise money and all that stuff. But one of the things that was essential was our air packs, and they couldn't fail. But if they did fail, we would die. But we couldn't go into a fire without them. So on a regular basis, we would break them down and clean them and inspect them in ways that I would have never have thought that those guys do. And so let's go all the way back to the one essential piece in my act that if it fails, my act is going to fail right along with it. So I take the same scrutiny that I did with my air pack as a firefighter for 13 years, and I inspect that thing regularly to make sure that the strings aren't frayed, that the coil is good and lubricated, and the thing that attaches it to my coat is working perfectly, and there's no frays, and everything is attached the way it should. And then you test it before the show. It's like, okay, I feel confident that everything is going to be just fine. But how many times have we had a prop that was essential, that it worked all the time, but then one day it fails, and it's like it crushes you. So you have to be able to figure out a way to anticipate what prop in your show is so essential that it cannot fail, and then figure out a way to make sure that it won't fail. Yeah. That's a little.
That's huge.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
I don't know how huge it is, but it's helped me. It's helped me. It has helped me create an act that has so many moving parts that if anybody was to really take a look at what I do and how it operates, they would be like, "There's no freaking way I'm ever going to do that." And that's I guess that's what separates this kind of an act from somebody stealing it. Is just like there's so many things that you really have to do well to make sure that you don't face plant on stage.
Yeah.
And I imagine because of that, that's another contributing factor to having other than the fact that people already associate this act with you and everything. That's another thing that just gives you the confidence to go, I'm going to, do performances all the time over Zoom and make sure people can see this act. I feel like there are so many people, like what we were talking about before, that will create in a vacuum and then not show anybody their FISM act until the performance, and try and keep everything under wraps, and they're afraid of anybody doing anything similar. Whereas, like you're saying, that it's been through showing it to other people that you've been able to allow the act to evolve and continually improve. So that's great. What were you going to say, Ryan?
I see Ryan Edwards says, wrap it up soon.
Ditto. I actually feel that because I didn't tell Stuart, like, most of the time episodes usually run 2 to 3 hours. And I was like, we've had a couple run more than 4, but that was crazy. But I felt bad because I thought about it before and I was like, I don't think I ever told him how long we go. And some people, when we tell them, are like, we want to do a half hour. Like, that's it. Like 30 minutes, maybe an hour tops. And you've been absolutely incredible, and given us so much insight into, how you've come from point A to point B and getting ready in a couple of weeks, which is amazing. So, I mean, it's been absolutely inspiring. I'm hungry for chicken nuggets. That's my issue. I'm like craving them now. I'm like,
no, we probably should wrap up.
5 minutes from my house.
Yeah, we got to make sure that we wrap up before the place is closed, so you can get your nuggets. But the tendy,
honey. Actually, and
chicken
now
nuggets,
here there is spicy chicken nuggets out now.
spicy chicken nuggets and honey, dude. What is that? Is that better than nuggets and honey, or is that worse?
You got to just try it. There you go.
You got to just try. I want to just throw up Hey JD's some of the things that he mentioned when you were talking about lean. He was saying worth looking up CI/CD and agile processes too.
Yep.
Agile processes use lean, but combined with Kanban boards and sprints, which time box improvements and goals. So I assume just making that process even more efficient by time boxing, so then you're able to ensure that you track and are able to have predictable growth and progress as you're going along.
Well, yeah,
Kanban board Kanban.
Yeah, and there's Kanban. There's also Kaizen events where you gather all the people who are involved in the process in one place, and you work out the process so you can see what it looks like.
That's like Kaizen, right? Like the idea that you continually improve a little bit every day, incrementally.
Well, Kaizen is like a whole event in itself. It's like it can last a week. It can last a day. But it's gathering all the people. Like if you have a team of people that are helping you with your act, it's best to get everybody in one room, and then you break down the entire show, and you do top-down maps. I mean, there's all kinds of different stuff. But you figure out what everybody's role is, from the lighting person to the sound person, whatever, and you just make it a well-oiled machine. The whole thing is that you want your act to have predictable results. If I do this, then the audience should react a certain way. And it's creating standard work. And one of the magical things that happens when you put this kind of attention to an act is that you get to a certain point where you become the character and you can just play, so that not every show is exactly the same, but the character might react a little differently in this space than another space. The curtain may hang a different way, the archway, the architecture, or the sound, something might be a little bit different. It's the same thing that happens in acting when you do a play or a musical over and over and over again. You become so pat in your movements that and your singing that you have the ability to just explore and play, not to the point where it upsets the apple cart, but you can just add a little bit more personality because you feel free to do so. And and it will look right because you know your character inside and out. And as long as everything, I mean, you know your character's universe better than anybody. It's in your blood, so you're not gonna do anything that he or she wouldn't do. So that's one of the nice things about drilling down and working so hard on something like this. I recommend everybody try doing something close to like doing a FISM act, but just take one of your routines in your act and just say, I am just gonna blow the walls off of this 1 3-minute routine and just see where I can take it. And you might actually surprise yourself and come up with a masterpiece that everybody can't wait to see.
I like that. I think most people, it's like Blaze said before, it's like I have these tricks, I'm just going to fit them into a show or do that. But to look at an individual routine and just take it and try to make it something bigger than what it is or what you foresee it becoming, I think is inspiring to try. Like you said, just do it because I can think of little things in my show where I'm like, okay, this is at least for my corporate show, it's like it's not so much story based, but it's like, okay, this is kind of not a throwaway, but this is a quicker routine. It would be fun to take a routine like that. That's actually what one of my older mentors said to me when I was working on illusions and stuff. He said, go to the magic shop and buy the piece of magic that you hate the most. Like the thing that you think is just crap at the magic shop. And I picked up, I won't say the trick because it's become a pretty famous trick now. But I hated it. I was like, this is terrible. I think it's cheesy. And I picked it up and he said, now make this your trick. Make this your signature trick. Because he was trying to explain to me that the in-between illusions is when the audience actually gets to know you, because illusions usually last 30 seconds and there's no talking usually in them. And so he's like, it's the in-between the illusions that are the important part. So don't worry about, spending thousands and thousands of dollars on these big things. Figure out who you are. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody once told me when I was in the early phases of this act, they said every second that you're on stage, you have to have purpose, and I understood that. But when you have an act that is so nitpicky, like going into FISM, I mean, you have no idea how nitpicky it is. It's so god awful nitpicky. But the thing is that I have literally gotten to the point where after I do a rehearsal, I go frame by frame. Can you imagine? Frame by frame. Where am I looking? Am I looking in anticipation of what's going to happen by my eyes? So I've learned how to correct telegraphing by going frame by frame by frame, and I'm like, this is madness.
Yeah,
absolute madness. This shouldn't be, but it's amazing what exactly what you're saying. It's the in between parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's in between parts in this act too, where there isn't magic happening, where I might be thinking, or I could be, or something else could be happening that I have to be doing something, or I'm setting something up that'll happen later, but I can't let the audience know what's happening, so I have to cover it with something else. And it's those in-between moments that I discovered by going frame by frame by frame, or slow motion through, so I can see what the motion actually looked like, and going back over it again. And then I would challenge myself and say, okay, when I do this, what'll it look like if I adjust this movement that I'm trying to disguise based on what I saw frame by frame. And it is amazing what happens when you break it down in that way. And all of this has happened since May. Is this incredible breaking down of, and let me explain what the inspiration for it. As I was watching all the videos of my act from 2017 until the last show I did, which was in the castle in March of 2020. And I looked at it and was like, man, it's like the act has evolved and it's changed. And it's just like, I'm still seeing the same guy just doing this little foot dance, just moving over here and doing something over there, but I'm not seeing something else. And I didn't know what that was. And it was just frustrating me. So I watched this documentary because what else is there to do during the pandemic? And it was Metallica. And it was how Metallica was trying to create a new album, and they had to replace their bass guitarist. So they were trying to create an album without a new bass guitarist, just a substitute. And so they created this album, and this documentary was over 2 years in the making. And during the time, there was arguments, and one guy had to go to rehab, and it was pretty interesting. So they finally make the album, and there's this long white bearded guy who is a road manager, and he's, obviously this guy lives out of an ATA case. It's like when you want to know what sounds good and what doesn't, you open up this ATA case, and out comes this guy. All right, let me hear your record, man. So he's like in his late 60s, rode hard. And he's like, so the band is like, this is the new album. This is the cover song. And he's like, okay, man, let me hear it. And he's going, uh-huh. And the band is like this, what does this guy think? And he goes, yeah, man, it's good. Yeah. But it's missing the heart. It's missing heart, man. It doesn't have anger. The song, it's about anger, but I don't feel the anger, man. You missed it. And the guys are like, oh, we got to go back to the drawing board, because and that's what was missing with this character, is that there was a sense of purpose, a sense of the heart and soul of this guy was just, I was just doing tricks. For all of these years, I was just doing tricks. And that's when I decided to say, okay, if this rehearsal starting July 1st had better darn look better 3 weeks from now. And I have to start seeing some better facial expressions. I've got to see better pauses. I have to see better choreography. I better start seeing more bits and pieces, not just magic. I wasn't looking for magic at this point. I was looking for bits and pieces, the in-between stuff. And by golly, we were digging stuff up every single day. It was just like, dig a little deeper. Oh, nugget of gold, some dirt there, but yep, we're gonna keep this. And I even changed the color of my wand to red during this period, and it looks better. We go to the 3-candle candelabra. I even wear a sock garter now. And I'll tell you why. What happened with that is that number one, back in the 30s, you're talking around the Great Depression era, and people would put money under their mattresses. They wouldn't trust the banks, and if you went out in public, you could be mugged. So you're hiding money all over the place. So when I lose money in the mirror, it's like, oh, I lost my money, and then I try to get it, and then I'm not reflecting my hand, and so my hand gets burnt off, and then I figure out, oh, I've got to reflect my hand and get it back to, and then it restores. And I've always thought, where do I get this money from? The reserve. And I had always thought about having this sock garter, but something always kept me away from doing it, because it was like somewhere along the line, somebody said, oh, that'd be dumb. and it's like, no, I got to trust my instincts. And so I bought a sock garter, and I stuffed my reserve money in it. And I can't tell you how many people say that that's one of their favorite bits.
Wow.
And it's not a magic trick. It's one of those in-between pieces.
Yeah.
That's so important, because it shows another layer about this character. It tells a little bit more about
it's not magic, yet it draws people into the narrative even more. Yeah,
exactly.
That's amazing. I think overall a great piece of advice for so many of the people that so many of the things that you've talked about seem to encapsulate is just the idea that I think that there are a lot of magicians that are like, where do I even start to try and create magic? And the fact that you've been able to lay this out in a way where, yes, there is creativity, but it's not some woo-woo kind of thing. There is a formulaic process to continually improving and continually growing as a magician, and being able to find inspiration by this, this going through your act and constantly looking for the flaws, and separating your ego from it. Like what you were saying is that there's no more emotion attached to this, because you've been able to free yourself and separate yourself from it. There's, I think, what Stephen Pressfield in his book, The War of Art, talks about this, about how, the amateur artist, it is simply their avocation, and they love it and are so passionate about what they do that their ego is wrapped up in it way too much, but in order to actually progress, you have to kind of separate those and then be willing to look for the problems that you need to solve and continually improve. So I think that there have just been so many incredible pieces of advice, and I'm just really happy that we had you on the show tonight, because I'm absolutely going to be rewatching this episode, which I rarely do, is go back but I'm going to be rewatching so much of this.
I love that Spidey commented, best damn silent act in Fool Us history.
Thank you.
And then Hey JD said Teller is proud as well. So
Is.
But
is
he was, but he still is. Yeah,
he still is.
I
know he's getting up there in age, guys, but he still is proud. He still is around.
What I'll add one more thing. I know we've been saying goodbye for a while, but when we're all having fun, it takes a while to say goodbye.
Yeah.
But I was watching a documentary, and Lance Burton said something that resonated with me, and it's true. It's true with every film, every play, every musical you've ever seen. He said the problem with magic is getting people to care about the magic, to care about the guy that's actually doing it. And I was like, what the? He's absolutely right. That is one of the key factors when you're on stage. If the audience doesn't care about you, that's death.
Yeah.
So if there's a way that you can find a way to get the audience to care about you, you are in good territory. And I know that I'm in good territory with this character, because when there's a point in the act where the audience cheers. I mean, literally cheers like I scored a goal. And it's when I discover that I know I'm now understanding that I have to have something in this hand that reflects and it appears in this hand. And when I restore my money, when I get the money out of my sock, and it's like, okay, and I multiply the money, every single time at that point, the audience just goes, yes, yes, you got it. And it's because I've gotten into their heads, because they are going, no, don't do it like, oh, he did it like, oh. And then when I do it right, they're like, you got it, buddy.
Yeah.
And that is where it's like, okay, this guy is somebody, for some reason, the audience wants him to succeed. And that to me means that I have to keep tapping into that, so that they understand that this guy is not ego driven. He's you, he's me, he's everybody, and he has no ill intent. That's why you don't have the monkey's paw in this act.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing that you're able to get people to have that kind of relationship with your character despite you not saying a word, that they're able to just totally fall into the narrative and feel as though they kind of know your character and are on and just know that they're on his side. I especially people going into a magic show, there are a lot of people going into a magic show with a lot of preconceived notions about what a magician is, and maybe they've seen a magician that had more of a kind of antagonistic presentation, or like a thing of, I'm trying to fool you, I'm trying to trick you, I want you to feel dumb or whatever, which I think most magicians don't have that kind of vibe, but there are some that do. And so the fact that you're able to immediately get people on your side and are invested in what your character is doing without saying anything is just incredible. So,
well,
but it's been a lot of work to get there, I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of work. But one of the rules that I learned, and I wish I could quote you where I heard it, but it's a book about, I think it's called Hitmaker. I think that's what it's called. And in order to make a hit song, there's actually an algorithm for it. There's a certain beat to making a song. And then they drill it down even farther, and they say the reason why pop culture is pop culture is that it comes from a place of familiarity. Each new thing of pop culture rests on the shoulders of something else before it. Every once in a while, something comes out that's totally radically different. But when you think of avant-garde, is there any one artist that really just stands out and go, oh yeah, that piece, I remember it? Not really. It's because it's so avant-garde. It's so crazy because you don't have a compartment up here for it to fit in. But I'll say this, Bruno Mars is a perfect example of familiarity. He's got this R&B feel. He also has a distinct 1980s kind of feel, but it's a now feel because he's a party song. He creates party songs that are like Kool and the Gang, that are like anthem type songs that Journey would make. So he's just got this he's keyed in on a part of our music culture, so he can so he was able to stand out with just some of the greatest music of this generation. It'll always be Bruno Mars, and it's because he comes from a place of familiarity. And if you look at Bruno Mars's music at weddings, you see every person in the wedding is getting into his music, from the grandparents all the way down to the little kids. It's safe music. It's fun music. It's party music. And that's what this character that I helped create, well, that I did create, is that it comes from a place of familiarity. I fit into a slot that is in everybody's head. There's this guy that
Yeah, even like when you were talking about earlier, that when you made the realization through the discussion about the cloth that it was going to become a haunted mirror, and now that the other props were going to have that haunted feel, now it conjures up so much imagery within the mind of the spectator about, you know, haunted houses and castles and things, and like what you were talking with that guy, the fact that he imagined a whole castle set behind you, even though it didn't exist. It was because of the slot that it had fit in within his mind. Which is
even the story itself is comes from a familiar place. The Genie in the Bottle, the Sorcerer's Apprentice is probably the most familiar one that this is attached to. Mirror, mirror on the wall. All of these things that are interrelated and are iconic, they all are there on purpose. They support each other. Even though the skull is not a magic prop, but when you see it, you know, how many old magic posters have you seen where there's a book and a cloth and a skull and a candle? Well, that comes from the 16th century painting, not a magician.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, all of this imagery, it's already in our head for some reason.
And the magic begins before you even start doing any magic in that case, because people associate everything that they're seeing with magic.
Yep, that's why it's so important when that curtain opens, they see a covered mirror, which means somebody died. You cover a mirror with a cloth in many cultures. Now, people may not know that it's a mirror, but most people, when they see those two sticks, it's like, okay, that's interesting. You see the skull on the table and this mysterious book that's covered with a cloth, and then all of a sudden, blip, you see the 3-candle candelabra and the character. It starts revealing itself in their brain a little bit at a time, and it's like it's interesting when I listen to people talk about the act. I just hear so many people say that it's like, oh, it so much reminds me of Abbott and Costello or the Three Stooges, or it reminds me of this movie I saw, Dracula, or you name it. But everybody has a different experience that it's all coming from the same slot in their brain, you know, that from media that has been fed to them over the years.
Yeah, it's interesting how people, like, just their different avenues of life will put it towards one slot or the other, but it kind of still fits down the same highway, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what will help magicians continue improving the art is coming from a place of familiarity rather than bringing out a prop that doesn't look like it comes from this world and saying, look, I have an empty crystal casket. I've never seen one before. Already I'm looking, how thick is that? You know, I've had so many experiences sitting in an audience and they go, and the girl appears, and my friend who's not a magician would inevitably say, that base didn't look thick enough for her to fit in. So already, you know, their brain is already kind of like trying to figure it out. because it's already a suspicious prop.
Yeah.
And again, it's your brain goes into this defensive mode. It's like, I have to figure this out. What is this thing that I don't understand? Why is this guy putting these discs into a tube that are colored, and then the colors rearrange? I don't understand. I don't understand the concept. Why is this important?
Yeah.
Why are they rearranging? It's hard to figure that out. So I think the more natural the props are, and we're getting that way, especially with people that do iPad magic. Some of it's really magical when they're pulling things off of the iPad, because it's something that's familiar. We've held on to it, and it's part of our body. If you could do something with their cell phone, and it creates a better connection with the audience, taking somebody's dollar bill and ripping it in half and saying, you keep this half, I'll keep this half. Well, wait a second, it's new again. You can have it back. Yeah, thank you very much. And then on to the next thing.
Yeah.
It's more important that we start focusing our magic on things that people are familiar with, instead of, I hate it when I see people bring out these old Grant folding screens, and they've got Chinese writing on them, and it's like, what? They don't even know what it says.
Yeah.
And somebody told me a story that when Grant made that folding screen, he saw this Chinese writing in a window. Have you heard this story? And the Chinese writing says, smoke more cigarettes.
Smoke more cigarettes?
Yeah. I think it is, if I remember correctly, that, but again, it's like not knowing what are you dealing with here. If you don't know what these symbols mean, why are you using them? Understand what they are.
Absolutely.
Ryan Edwards, getting tired, worked outside too long today.
I was outside working all afternoon.
My favorite part of this podcast has been Ryan trying to suddenly put stuff in the private chat and having it immediately read aloud.
No,
I'm secrets in these streets.
Well, Stuart, what are you doing? So I do men's night at my house every Wednesday night as well. So all the neighbors, all the guys from the neighborhood come over.
Oh, that's fun.
Pizza oven in the backyard, so I cook all the pizzas and stuff. So all the guys, and then we usually play ping pong and stuff. And the guys last week were like, we want to play cornhole this week. So I was like, okay, well, I got married 2 weeks ago, and then we went on our honeymoon, and then we just got back this past week. And so the backyard was an absolute mess, like grass crazy and everything else. So all day I've been like in the backyard mowing the grass, cleaning everything, re-sanding all the benches and stuff. And so, but yeah, I'm like, oh boy, it's like, oh, I'm starting to pray. And I know my wife is now in the room by herself. So I was like, I'm slowly
I think
fading.
I think we've had a great almost 3 hour and 15-minute episode. So
yeah,
time flew. There was just so much. I think it's really fascinating because there are very few people that are in the same kind of situation as you. And I think that it's great that we got to interview you at this time, which is during your prep leading up to this huge competition. And it's amazing. It's a full-time job of constant reiteration on those same 8 minutes and 56 seconds. Right? Is that it was just over and over? Right. Yeah. By the way, when you said you went frame by frame on 8 minutes and 56 seconds, that is 16,080 individual frames. I just threw it in a calculator. I was like, oh my God.
I tell you, it's insane. You can't do this with your regular show.
Yeah.
It's just new. And that's why FISM people will say, yeah, this is my last one.
The only one that does that is Says Blaira on
Says Blaira on
every Magic After Dark goes through it frame by frame,
there's a fan account named Saves Blaira, and he goes through and he makes memes of our of every episode. So I'm excited to see what he makes on that.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Oh, it's intense. It's intense.
He's posting significantly more content than I am. So I need to catch up to it. But this has been a blast. I had so much fun. I had so many more things that I was thinking about throwing out and talking about, but we would go for another 3 hours. So
we have to have you back on after FISM.
That would be
okay.
If you're down for it.
Love
Yeah,
that.
well, the qualifiers in 2 weeks, so I don't know how much more I'll be able to give you insight there, but hopefully I'll qualify, and then in a year, I'll be back in Quebec. So maybe next year.
You'll know after the qualifier, though. Obviously, if you qualify, are you allowed to announce it at that point?
Oh yeah.
Okay. No. Sweet. So we'll keep everybody updated on that as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so one last question that I just had was that I was thinking about for a while is you were talking about being able to, build up that discipline, especially from having worked regular jobs in the past, to then apply that to working on your magic. What does a day in your life look like to you right now as you're preparing for FISM? What you're waking up around what time, and then what does a work day look like, preparing as you're, working on this act and trying to get it ready?
Oh, it's magical all day long. I wake up and I go for a run. I clear my head. I do the run in the morning. And then it's nothing crazy. I just do the emails. All the crazy stuff happened earlier in the summer. If you were to look at my crazy time, because right now I'm at a point where it's like I don't want to overdo it. You don't want to peak too early, I guess. So you just kind of want to. I'm doing the act, once a day, just to make sure that everything is working right. If I find something that I just want to really focus on, I'll focus on that. And I have more Zooms that I'm going to do that I'll announce. But a day is just typical like everybody else. You do office work, you do reply to emails. I have a very busy end of September and a very busy October coming up. Richard Preston is going to be performing live for the first time. Ooh, how cool is that? So he's got to take his show out of Zoom and put it in the physical world. So I'm working hard on writing that. Nothing crazy. The craziness happened early in the summer. That was a time that I was getting up every single day and just I would probably between 5 and 8 hours just working, just digging, videotape, watch. I mean, as soon as I'm done, watch. I wouldn't even put the video in the computer yet. I would go, okay, I would watch this piece and go, okay, I got to do this, set up the camera at a different angle, videotape that, then watch it, and just do that all day long.
Yeah, just keep drilling.
Yeah, and then the character development was the next phase, and that was just as long, just as crazy, and now it's fun. So now it's actually relaxing.
Did you have a map in your mind? Like, for example, when you were saying the character development thing, we're getting some echo.
You're echoing like crazy.
Let's see. But when you said that the character development phase came after this phase, of drilling the act and things, did you have, before that all started, kind of a macro map in your mind of exactly how you were going to break down your time leading up to the qualifiers for FISM?
Kind of. The pandemic threw everything off. The first FISM, you know, it was a regiment. I mean, it was every single day working hard on perfecting the act and the magic. Some character, you know, character was important, story was important, but the act was still young and it was still developing. So we were discovering something new. It seemed like every day. So there wasn't a lot of time to really focus on the character. So I think the regimen, to answer your question, is get the meat and potatoes first. What is your concept? What is your storyline kind of look like? What is the goal of the character? And then insert character into the other thing is what are the rules of this universe? Then insert the character into those rules and see how the character operates, and how and how does the magic interact with this person. And then, and only at a particular moment, which is where I'm at now, where you're comfortable that this is the act, and now you can start finding all the bits of business, and it's the bits of business that bring the character to life. It's all of the, you know, how does he take his hat off? How does he take his glasses off? How does, how does he tie his shoes? How does he walk into the room? Is he really scared? Does he have a cold? All of these little things that you're trying to convey, small bits and pieces of information to the audience, are so important, but they can only come when the act is near finished. Because it's kind of like when you're handed a play, the play is already written, and all you have to do is give life to the character by understanding the character's history, giving him or her your own backstory, but it's already written. So I'm at the part where the act is written, and now I'm giving life to the character, and I think that's the order.
This is all really great advice. Absolutely.
Well, there's definitely been like 100 gold nuggets in this.
There's just left and right. Set a record for most in an episode. Absolutely.
It probably is, because I think a lot of, and the funny thing is, like, nice. We'll urge people during the week to go back and watch. But it's just great that this is now a resource that's available for people to go back and view this, and hopefully people that are watching will pick up on some of this, and hopefully we do see magic over the next little while continue to go uphill instead of cascading back down. So I thank you for putting that information out there and hopefully pushing the magic community even further. I know you've inspired both of us. I mean, like I said, the first time I saw your performance, I was like, this guy's the underground beast. And I was like, shoot, like I need to go back to work and work harder. But tonight has only pushed that even more. I know I wish you, I'll say it on behalf of both of us, that we wish you the absolute best. I don't want to say best of luck, because I know that you don't need luck. You're prepared. You're going to kill it. But I will say, break a leg. Best of luck in the qualifiers. I obviously will see it on Facebook and stuff, but we will keep everybody posted on it. And hopefully we can have you back sooner. Obviously not, maybe we'll have you after FISM, but we'd love to have you back even for a little bit after the qualifiers, just to hear how it went and
sure
stuff. So that would be
anytime. This is a lot of fun. You guys are well prepared, and you have good questions. This is
Well,
good.
you haven't seen half of the crazy segments yet either. So usually we have a lot of crazy segments, but
Yeah, we swapped out one of the segments. We usually have an IQ test, but we've swapped out the IQ test and legitimately we swapped out the IQ test and instead put in the people having the opportunity to call in. So this was our first time where we've ever had viewers call in and ask questions. So we're going to expand that in the future. But
Great.
yes, thank you again for coming on. This was a blast, and thank you for
Thank you.
imparting your wisdom upon us. I'm thoroughly inspired and
sure.
excited.
We like to end the episode how we start every episode. So if you'll join us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys next week on Magic After Dark.